Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. Today, we have a very exciting show for you today because we have a special guest that some of you may know, others may not know. And this is our brother, Ustad Shahzadeh. Okay, so Shahzadeh, who is pretty much infamous on Twitter because he is a cultural critic, a Persian Iranian cultural critic, and he's a master rage baiter also on the platform. And if you follow him, there's never a dull moment. And I encourage you to do so on Twitter. He also has a YouTube channel. And we're going to bring him on, inshallah, and discuss a lot of politics with the recent Iranian protests, which have died down just over since last week. And, the possibility of so-called regime change, the Iranian government. And we're going to talk about Iranian society more generally. Shahrzadeh has lived in Iran for extended periods of time. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the diaspora, Iranians who are in the West, Iranian identity, where culture meets religion. And he has a lot of interesting insights on that as well. Overall, it's going to be a good conversation, inshallah, and we're going to have fun as well. And we're going to be looking at your super chats. If you have a question about Iran, you have a question about Iranians, you want to ask about poetry. Actually, I forgot to mention that he's also a expert on Persian literature and poetry specifically, and he teaches classes on this, and he calls himself or describes himself as a Sufi. We're going to ask him about that as well. If you have questions, put them in the chat, put it in the super chat. Your super chats will help with our production costs, of course. And yeah, so this is going to be exciting and enjoyable. So let's bring on Shahrzadeh. And I should, before I bring him on, also disclaimer, the necessary disclaimer. I'll actually bring him on for the disclaimer. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam.
So I was about to give a disclaimer and say that we don't agree on everything. Okay, I think you have to give that disclaimer as much as I have to give it for our respective audiences. So you're in more potential to get canceled than me for this collaboration, but we don't care. We don't care what people say. It's two Iranian brothers. We're going to talk, and we're not going to care what the haters say. Okay, so please, I think, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I'm very excited to speak to you. This is the first time we're kind of speaking like this, but I feel like I know you. I feel like I know you very well.
It's true. We do share this. We have a very similar background in story. I mean, we were speaking briefly a minute ago, but I think if I can say, both of our families migrated to America. It was a very different America. And a lot of people don't understand, what America was like then, and also what it means to be a kind of urban, cosmopolitan, 12er Iranian background. So you have Islamic ethics, you have the Islamic background, but maybe like what happened to Turks, you're not, practicing it the way that a Pakistani or an Egyptian or a Jordanian would, but Islam is still part of your life. You come to America, you find that the society shares similar kind of moral values. And then during our lifetime, the society has changed so much. And then you and I, we went through similar spiritual journeys where we were introduced to Islam, not in our homeland, Iran, but in America and diaspora with Pakistanis, Turks, Egyptians, all the people who are around us, right? Because unfortunately, Iranians are not very connected to that heritage. So we share that in common. Now, of course, we're two human beings, so we're not going to share every view in common. So like your disclaimer you made, I also make the disclaimer that we're two Iranians discussing Iran. That doesn't mean that we love every view that the other one has. Brother Daniel definitely has some views that would, maybe he finds some of the views I have regarding Islam not the best, and maybe the other way around. But when I lived in Iran, I had this experience where we lived together. We're all Iranian. And I said this, and it made a lot of Iranians angry, which is that there is no future where only your type of Iranian exists. So in Iran, we have people who are upon the Hanbali or Shafi'i madhab, and they are Athari in cities like Bandar Abbas. So you have famous speakers like Pordil in Iran who are allowed at some level, I presume, to speak, who studied at Medina University. And you have Turkic Hanafis who studied in Turkey, and they go and study with their ustads in Istanbul. And you have, so that's just not only just the Islamic breadth and depth of it. Of course, you have the Twelvers and all the other groups, but you have secular religious, and you run into these people. So there is no Iran without that full depth of Iranians. So maybe Brother Daniel, he'll be in Bandar Abbas and he'll say, wow, I'm with my people. Look, they're just like me. They're speaking Persian. They love Imam, Ahmed bin Hanbal, and they're on the Athari madhab. And maybe I'll be in the mountains of Kurdistan, and they're Shafi'is, and they're reading Rumi, and they're reading Abdul Qadir Gailani. And that's all Iran. That's all beautiful. That's fine. And the seculars in Tehran, in northern Tehran, saying, we are Persian. We're not Muslim. We can all live in peace. We can all live and respect each other, I hope. And that's the spirit of this conversation, despite all of our well-known, probably easily detectable disagreements.
Well, I'm not just tolerating you for the sake of diversity.
I
actually do.
I appreciate it.
I value your insights into politics, and especially into the Iranian culture. And sometimes I use your material to rage bait secular Persian family members. It's always good for that. So, for example, your material, just the fact that the way that you're dressed is enough to send certain Persians into complete insanity.
That's very true.
But that's very valuable. That's very valuable that your insight into what was Iranian culture before the Pahlavi government, before the Shah.
Right.
And it seems like there's a complete amnesia, cultural amnesia that Persians have, especially in the diaspora. And it's disturbing. It's like people without a root, and that's something that you talk about. I want to get ahead of ourselves though. First, let me just start with SHARGHZADEH. What is the meaning of this?
Sure,
Explain it for those who are not aware.
So I have a blurb, and I was thinking actually before we made this, I should make a video explaining it. So many people ask me now. It means struck by the East. So Iranian third worldist types of thinkers, secular communist types, had cooked up an idea called SHARGHZADEH to describe Iranians. It was an economic as well as a cultural criticism that Iranians in the Pahlavi era, they were lost, they were attached to the West, they had no sovereignty. And the most famous explanation of this is SHARGHZADEH by Jalal al-Ahmad. And when I lived in Iran as a teenager, that was the first time I lived in Iran aware of what the world is like, what's going on, what people think. When you're a child, I spent summers there. What do you know as a child? Ice cream, playing soccer with the little pink and purple ball. I mean, we don't really know much, right? But I was a teenager, and I started to encounter all these weird attitudes. So I went and bought my first pair of traditional clothes with an Afghan brother. So he was my neighbor. So we went to the traditional market, and he showed me an Afghan store, and I bought a shalwar kameez. And I was wearing it at my house. And I thought, my Pakistani friends wear this stuff. Why can't I? I'm right next to them. And my family had a full meltdown over it. It was just they all gathered. My aunt, my uncle, my grandpa, and grandma. They're like, you cannot wear this. You don't understand. This isn't America. That's not allowed. We're not that type of family. We have a more secular Western orientation. People are going to make fun of us. You're one of us. You have to be like us. And someone along the way pointed this book out to me, and I read it. And it's a little dated, but it really did outline the mindset that a lot of Iranians have. SHARGHZADEH, being struck or toxified by, West toxified. So then eventually I kept pushing and prodding my family and saying, I like to hang out in traditional tea houses. I don't want to go to a Italian style cafe, or, I want to go to the masjid or do ziyarah, etc. And eventually I just said, well, you guys are SHARGHZADEH. And one of my family members said, well, then you are SHARGHZADEH. And what that meant, and what people don't understand, is not that I am an Easterner. It means that I'm a Westerner who wants to capture, to join, or even be maybe in a LARPy way sometimes, I admit, Orientalist way sometimes, be Eastern. So I'm like a Westerner who really wishes he was an Easterner, and Iranians are Easterners who really wish they were Westerners. That's kind of what it means in some.
Yeah. So tell us about growing up, and more about where you were born, what kind of schooling did you have, your time in Iran. Just that kind of background will help people more situate your ideas and who you are. And I think that'll enrich the pursuant conversation, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. Thank you. So I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and my parents didn't have anyone around them. I had no family members, no big Persian community. So my father's mother and father, my paternal grandparents, came to help raise me, and they were spending the day with me most of the time. So I was fully immersed into this Iranianness with them because, unlike my parents, they had never been in America before they came to help raise me. So I was speaking with them every day in Persian. I was translating the TV for them. And I even remember some of my earliest language understandings came from, I think it was George Bush, was talking about the war on terror. And he said, "We will not stand for this." And I told my grandparents, he said, "Ma baraye in nemi istim," or something like that, which doesn't make sense in Persian, like it's literal. So I grew up with them, and they would tell me stories about what Iran was like before. I mean, even for Reza Shah's era stories. So my grandfather's father and his life and what it was like being modernized. And you talk about stuff like this in schooling. I remember my grandfather describing the transition from being in a mektab to being in a school. That he used to go with his sisters and brothers and sit in a circle in a mosque with a mullah to learn how to read. And then one day, his dad just gave him a uniform and said, "Now you're going to this place called a school." And they had to stand in a line. And he described the very kind of dictatorial environment where you have to stand straight and you'll get hit if you don't stand straight. And, you know, it's very rigid, it's very Western. So he lived through that. So I got those anecdotes. And he would take me back during the summers. So I would spend summers in Iran. I'd visit once, twice a year. When I was not going to school, it was very easy. I went to school, I learned English, so that helped acculturate me in America. Occasionally, I still mix up he and she, which exposes me. But then I grew up then, and then my grandparents eventually stopped visiting. They grew tired of America. They couldn't assimilate. They couldn't learn English. It was just too much for them. I was a teenager. They moved back. Then I moved with them eventually. After a few years of really missing them, I said, I want to spend a year there. So I went and spent a year in Iran, and then I came back. I finished my university. That's where I went to Jordan, and I studied Islam and Arabic in Jordan, and I lived in Turkey. And then after that, when COVID started, I went to Iran again. So that kind of, I think it's like the last 20 years of my life approximately. Since then, I have lived in Kuwait and Turkey again, but now I'm back in New York City. So that I would say that is basically why I had this peculiar immersive experience, even though if you add it together, I think I've spent 4 years in Iran.
So when you were in Iran, were they treating you, did you feel like you're out of place, or was your accent kind of revealing to people there? Like my personal experience, like I also have a very similar experience. Like we weren't surrounded by family growing up like Iranians in Texas, but we had, you know, there was this family friends, but we go over in the summer to Iran. And over there, like I speak Farsi, but like broken Farsi with a heavy American accent. And like I would get discriminated against. Like,
yeah, that does happen. You're right.
And even fights, like people would want to fight me on the streets.
Well, like, you know, Iranians are very protective about their identity. They don't like it when people become Americanized and Westernized. You'd be surprised. I go to Iran, people say, "You are not born in Iran. You weren't raised here. You're not one of us." Very emphatically, very strongly. They will say, "You are not Iranian. You are not one of us." So when I was going there as a child, you're just a kid. You're like with your grandpa. You're a novelty. It really hit me when I was a teenager. So I was a teenager in Iran. I was going to school. And people would make fun of me. They would call me Mamad Amrikai, which was a Behruz Vusuri movie about a guy named Muhammad who I think he wanted to go to America. He's like obsessed with the idea of moving there. Yeah. But they'd call me Mamad Amrikai, and they would make fun of my accent. And eventually, slowly, my accent got better, which helped that element of it. But it never quite stopped in that 1 year. I think there was always just enough that could give me away. It was really only when I lived there as an adult during COVID for 2 consecutive years. And I didn't even leave Iran, I think, for a year and a half of it. So just a consecutive year and a half, even when I traveled, I would just visit cities in Iran that I hadn't seen. And that really helped solidify it. And then doing linguistics and translation helped me kind of fine-tune accents, pronunciations. Today, people tend to just think that if I miss a word, that I'm just from a small town, especially with my clothing. So I kind of pass very easily. They're just like, "Oh, he's some villager. He's like a Kurd. That's why he enunciated this word differently." Or, you know, like he didn't know the exact modern, like a lot of technologies emerge that there's modern words for that we don't, like for example, withdrawal or transaction. Transaction in Persian is tara konesh, which literally means transaction in like from Middle Persian words. So like you're at the ATM wondering what the hell does tara konesh mean? You're like Google Translate, people behind you are yelling at you like, "Che khabare, what are you doing?" And I'm like, what does this mean? Anyway, so yeah, you get exposed a bit, you get roasted. Iranians are very protective of their identity. They're very proud of being Iranian.
Yeah, but that's kind of the contradiction that I also wanted to ask you about, because you see Iranians who come to the West, and even some of the more secular liberals in Iran itself, like Tehran, and they seem to be like Gharbzadeh in an extreme way, such that, and it's kind of like this self-contradiction. Like, I don't know, like they're trying to square a circle, because they are at the, like, I have family members who they on on a certain day will be very proud of their heritage, their culture, cuisine, and then another day they'll say something like, why are you teaching your kids Farsi? Like, this is a useless language. It's useless. They don't need this in the modern world. Why don't you teach them like French? Like, and it just blows my mind. Like, how can that contradiction exist?
No,
like, what's your take on that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And I think this schizophrenia is very mentally damaging and psychologically perilous for people to live with. So if you look at, there's a very good book called The Emergence of Iranian Nationalism by Reza Zia Ebrahimi, talks about basically how one comprador, an Iranian Azeri who was basically a traitor to Iran and worked for the Russian Empire against Iran, cooked up all these ideas about Aryanism, even though he was an Azeri Turk, about Aryanism and how Iran is this amazing ancient civilization. So Iranians, we're always talking about how we invented everything. People make fun of me for that. Sometimes I bait a bit on the internet with that. Oh, we invented this, we invented that. We're amazing. We have the best civilization. We were better than the Greeks. We kidnapped the Roman Emperor, all this stuff. But then the other flip side, the schizophrenia side, comes that we have been invaded and made genetically impure, and we are following this backward Semitic religion. So Iranians, and then also this vis-a-vis the West, this sense of inferiority. So we feel like we're superior, but we just happen to be inferior to the West in this moment. And also for the last 1,300 years, we've followed this weird Semitic backwards religion, astaghfirullah. And what this does is it creates this weird view where on one hand, you're extremely proud, but then in the next moment, you're extremely self-hating. So yeah, I heard people say commonly, why would you even care to come to Iran? What are you even doing here? What's your point of coming? Why would you learn Persian? They would just tell me. They would say, well, what do you do here? I say, oh, I'm here to study Persian and translate. They'll say it's a waste of time. They just straight up would tell me that. But then that same person would have the big farvahar, the big Zoroastrian symbol like dangling from his car window or something like that. So yeah, I've spent my time trying to diagnose and maybe help my fellow compatriots resolve this tension and just be at peace with what we are, basically.
Yeah, that book from Reza Zia Ebrahimi, it's a game changer, I think, for some Iranians.
Absolutely.
Because he brings in a lot of historical insight, like where did this idea of, we're the Persian people that goes back 4,000, 5,000 years, and where is this coming from? Because it seems like you missed like a couple of thousand years in between there. Like, what was Iran like before?
Yeah, absolutely. The sad part is we have no kind of meaningful connection to that part of our heritage. So other than Nowruz, and yes, there are Zoroastrian minorities, and yes, there is all kinds of stuff around, but our lived reality in the Iranian Muslim timeline is with Islam, is interacting with Pakistanis and Afghans and people who are our neighbors. We live in this region. Our neighbors are Iraqis and Pakistanis and Afghans and Turks and Azeris and Turkmens. That's our lived culture, our lived reality. So if you cut yourself off from Islam, like you said, that 1,500, 2,000 years of Rumi and Ghazali and Abu Hanifa and Imam Bukhari and even the 12-verse stuff, right, that maybe we don't focus on, but that's also a big part of it. We shaped so much of Islam. I mean, you could say Islam without Persians would not the core of it, not the prophethood in the Quran, but the civilization that we call Islam. I use that word civilizationally. Right? The idea of the way the hadith are canonized, the idea of the way that certain subjects are taught, the imperial infrastructure. This is our civilization that we're turning our back on. I tell Iranians, don't say, oh, Islam, because Iranians, I think they correctly understand that Islam is a struggling civilization. But the answer to that problem is, this is our civilization and we will bring it back on its feet again. The answer is not, oh, then we'll quit. That we'll just jump ship and be another civilization. That's weak. That's sad.
Yeah, it's like it's losing yourself, and
absolutely,
and you see that like with the this is something that you see with the diaspora, is that after one or two generations, The language is gone, their religion is gone, the identity is gone. Like they don't even like if I look at my cousins, which I have many who are in the West, like a lot of them, they don't speak Farsi at all. They don't identify as Iranian, like maybe because they're half Iranian, like because their parents didn't even marry within Iranians. And yeah, it's kind of, you're losing yourself. And then I mean, as a Muslim, like the most significant thing is like, okay, you have no religion now. And it's like Iran, like these Iranians don't have anything that they believe in strongly. Like they don't believe in any religion. They can't really become Christian. Some try. There are some Iranians that try to, like, they literally will even dye their hair blonde, and they'll try to go to church, and they just it doesn't work, because then they realize, oh, being a Christian actually requires some like effort, like some work, and this is foreign to me. So they quit that. They have no, like, they don't really believe in anything. So it's very sad.
That's so true. Now, I've seen maybe thousands at this point, I can say, actually many thousands of diaspora Iranians in my classes. We have 2 classes a week right here. We're at our center. We have Rumi circle and a Persian class circle. So literally hundreds have only just come to me face to face, let alone on the internet. And in Iran, I met a lot of diaspora Iranians who are visiting or living. And what I'll say, basically my general thing that I've taken away from it is that it's mostly religious or traditional. So not necessarily religious, but traditional minded people whose kids learn Persian. So I think if you did a statistical analysis, the vast majority of Iranian Americans who are able to read and write Persian at any significant level, and they're born and raised here, not the immigrants, are people who have religious parents, religious backgrounds. And it's not because the religion itself is teaching you Persian, but it goes along with it, this idea that your identity, your heritage is important. And ultimately, you find in America, if you don't have an ethno-religious component, or even just a religious component, you will lose everything. You'll just be melted into the pot, basically, and you'll just have no real identity to live with. I remember there was a guy on Twitter who said we underestimate how little the average secular mainstream American has. They're all living in year 0. You live in a house built 10 years ago, in a suburb built 10 years ago. You don't have any heirlooms. You have no heritage or culture or tradition. And that's where this emptiness of meaning in the country comes from. I mean, maybe I'm not religious in the way that everyone expects, or maybe I'm not the perfect Muslim, but I have this amazing heritage to reach for. And every time, in times of joy, in times of need, in times of curiosity, I have Ghazali and Rumi and Abu Hanifa and Bukhari. I have these amazing heritages. And even when you mentioned Christianity, if I had to choose between, I remember Uthman al-Khamis, and I lived in Kuwait, by the way. I taught his nephew, nephew. And he would show me photos of him, and I hope if he's listening, he's doing well. He knows who he is.
The Wahhabis are going to love this.
Yeah, I know. No, I lived in Kuwait. I'm wearing Kuwaiti dishtash, actually. I used to listen to their durus all the time. I love listening to Salafis. I listen to all Muslims. People think I'm like some sectarian. I'm not. I actually find the Salafis more interesting and illuminating to listen to in the Arabic language. But Uthman al-Khamis said, talking about recent events, he says, al-kitabi, al-kafir kitabi, ضد kafir غير kitabi. And it says, ihna mal kafir kitabi. So it's like the idea is, if you had to choose between a non-Muslim who's at least has a book versus a full non-Muslim, you choose the book. So that to say, if a Muslim, or if an Iranian American is raised an atheist and becomes a Christian, from my perspective, that's a way leg up than to just be an atheist spiritually. But the problem is they don't become real Christians. So we have one guy, I won't mention him, but he's very controversial. One Iranian American I know who became an Orthodox Christian. But other than that, and Sohrab Ahmari is a serious Catholic here in New York. But other than those 2 guys, all the Iranian Christians, they're part of these like non-denominational Protestant sects where they're dancing and it's like cringe boomer white people. It's not serious. At least if you were in a monastery in Greece chanting in ancient Greek, and I'm like, okay, it's sad that you're not a Muslim, but that's a respectable tradition. If you're in Rome doing the Latin mass and, you're reading Latin fiqh from like 2,000 years ago, that's at least respectable. I can say, okay, handshake, whatever, agree to disagree. At least you have something. But just the direction Iranians go, they just assimilate into just the most unremarkable American culture we have to offer. And it's just tragic to see.
It's not like Iranians, as you know, don't have a history of mixing. Like that's like you're describing as kind of neighbors. Like we have Arab, Afghan, South Asian neighbors, but it's also a lot of mixing. Like it just genetically. I don't know if you've done 23andMe, but
I have
like
not.
Yeah, I have not either. I'm worried about what it's going to reveal.
Right. They know your DNA now.
Yeah, but that kind of mixing, I guess, is inevitable, even like as we live in a globalized world. But there's just no like core of belief or tradition or heritage that is being held on to, and that's like I think a big part of why you're appealing to a lot of people, not just Iranians, is because you're trying to stick to that in a way that's unique.
Thank you.
And I think that when it comes to religion as well, like there is, like you're mentioning Salafi or Wahhabi, and some of the like outside of Iranians for a second, you have this idea of Islam as an abstract like set of beliefs.
No culture. Islam.
Yeah, don't bring in culture, right? So that I think has a kind of stripping effect, because so much of Islam comes through the culture, whether it is like how your your Pakistani grandfather practiced Islam, or your Turkish grandmother or Iranian grandmother, how she practiced Islam. Like, yeah, it's cultural, but it's also Islamic. It's
no, absolutely. My parents unknowingly gave me a Muslim upbringing. So growing up, we would go to Islamic centers and cultural events, but my parents were always wary of making me like too Muslim. They wanted to make sure that I could. They kind of inherently gave me, so they would say, don't eat hot dogs. And I would say, why? They wouldn't say, oh, because in the Quran, God says. They would say, hot dogs are pork. They're the dirtiest meat. Look what Jews do. Jews are smart. They would never eat pork. Like, don't eat pork. That's gross. And it's like, Mom, Dad, I want to go on a sleepover. And they would say, sleepovers are what veiled people do. Like loose, like, literally loose is what it means. Like you go sleep at someone's house. What, you don't have a house? And I would say like, or even I remember I think one of the proudest things that my grandmother tells about me, or used to tell when she was alive, was that, in like 5th grade, dating, boy girl stuff starts to happen. And you had those like phone directories. So my grandmother so proudly says, my grandfather too, that I got a call at home from one of the other like 3rd grade or 4th grade girls. I've never said this to anyone. And from the directory, they're like, can I speak to Ali? And I said, yes. And there was like some school event or dance or something stupid. And I guess she was trying to get me to go with her. And I said, I would go, but I can't. It's against like my rules as a culture. Like I know that I'm not allowed to date. Dating is not allowed. And they were so proud of that. As an adult, I'd be like 25 years old. They would tell me like, Ali, he was so pious as like an 8-year-old. So these things are intuitively, you understand the adab, the way you do ta'aruf, the way you do salam, the respect you have for elders, for, your host culture. Even these are all Islamic ethics. I mean, even my parents, like the attitude of some Muslims versus other immigrant groups. Now, this is in Islam, that when you enter society, you have an implicit social contract that as a Muslim, you have to honor it. Now, my parents never told me that, but what they would say is, مهمونی اینجا تو راه دادن احترام بهت دادن بهشون احترام بذار. You're a guest. They let you into this country, so show respect to the country that let you come here. And that's why, if you notice, Iranian Americans, they never cause trouble in American society. They're very kind of quiet, low key. They don't ever like get in American people's faces and say, oh, you stupid person, you American colonized country. They don't do that. Iranians are very like, just chill with Americans. That's Islam. That's also Islamic ethics. You're a minority in their country. Don't cause drama. My grandparents would say, did Armenians in Iran come and tell Muslims we hate Islam? So why would a Muslim, they were talking about other Muslims, why would a Muslim go tell a Christian, I hate Christianity in America? They're like, show some adab to the people around you. So that's all Islam.
Yeah, it's just amazing how much overlap. Like I have similar experiences, like I went to in public school, quite a large public school growing up in Texas. And even though they say Texas is like socially conservative, it is compared to other places. But in the big cities, they're more liberal.
They're all liberal in big cities.
Yeah. So that I was in a big city, and more cosmopolitan, more multicultural. And I never did any dating, never went like and danced with someone at a school dance or prom or anything. And I wasn't religious at certain times like that. I wasn't in the sense of like, oh, I'm not doing this because I'm a Muslim and this is against Islam. It's because, well, this is not like what we do. Like, this is not what
exactly.
we do.
It's not our cultural identity.
This is not like, my parents would not approve of this, and I don't want to disappoint my parents. I have to be a good student, like focus on my grades. So that's
absolutely. No, it's very true. I mean, I remember,
like, but when I got religious, like, I didn't appreciate the extent to which my parents and my family like made me who I am and protected me from these things. I just thought that, oh well, that's my parents don't understand religion, like that kind of like arrogance that sometimes people have. I'm not saying that that's how you were, but for me, you know, reflecting now that I'm older, like I appreciate so much like the cultural upbringing that I had.
No,
and
absolutely.
I'm trying to convey that to my children as well, like with more of a like explicit religious instruction, but still, it's like the culture is so important.
Yeah, I agree. This is so wrong-headed. I've talked about it before. Muslims say Islam without the culture. They're together. It's a civilization. And that's also why I don't really worry about the state of Islam in Iran. People say, you know, people have become secular as a reaction to the government. I always say, look, we have 1,300 years of inertia. It is our civilization. Before Islam, we were also very religious in the form of Zoroastrianism. We had Christians. We had other religions. And Islam is our culture. Iranians, they might superficially be secular, but when you look for anything meaningful in our culture, you're going to find Conference of the Birds, you're going to find Rumi, you're going to find Ghazali, you're going to find Ihya Ulumuddin. That's our heritage. There's nothing but that. We don't read Middle Persian. We're not reading those cuneiform, you know, Mihi scripts. There's no fire temples that are really that active. And there's a small community. I wish them the best. I don't hate them. People think I hate them. It's not a real alternative. The only actual meaningful religious tradition that we have access to, culture, is Islamicate, is Muslim culture. And Iranians are overwhelmingly this way. And I think even the people who build themselves as secular, if you scratch, you'll just find they really just do have Islamic ethics. What they just mean is, I'm like an Istanbulite. I'm like a upper class Cairene. You know, I don't have a beard. But, you know, they have ghaira, they have notions of not eating pork, and they think drinking is disreputable. Like in Iranian weddings where people drink, a lot of times the men will go off in a corner and drink privately because they don't want to be perceived as drinking in front of women and children. You know, even secular people have this Islamic kind of, you know, drinking's maybe not the best thing type of vibe to them.
You think that's the older generation, though? It seems like the younger generation are more rebellious and they want to like put it in your face. But like, with older.
I remember I was at a wedding in Tehran when I was a child. And some of the men just like went off into a corner and came back, and their faces were red and they were very happy. And my grandpa said they went and drank in the corner. That's why they went off and they came back. So we used to have this culture. Who knows? Yeah, like you're saying, people will rebel, but ultimately, you know, people can't escape their temperaments, can't escape where they are, can't escape the history. You look around, everything is a mosque, everything's Islamic, everything's named after a person of Muslim background. Now, some of these protesters or whoever it was burned mosques. I don't think we're going to be like Anwar Hoxha's Albania, where you demolish every single last mosque. I don't think that's possible. I mean, where are people buried? Islamic cemeteries. You know, Hafiz's grave has Quran on it. The Shah's grave is in a mosque, a Sunni Sufi mosque, I should say. It's named after Al-Rafai in Cairo. I mean, they go to worship and send salawat on Muhammad Reza Shah, who, despite having heretical beliefs, was ultimately a Muslim. Like, you can't do takfir of him. He was a heretic in some ways, but he was a Muslim. So he would have tawheed at some level. He wouldn't want people doing salawat to him. But they're in a masjid doing that, so with a mihrab in the back. I went there, by the way. I went inside.
Oh, yeah.
With a mihrab and everything. So you're going to a masjid to do a cult about this guy who passed away.
Secular Islamic ritual.
Literally, they were saying Allahumma salli ala Muhammad Reza Pahlavi wa ala Muhammad. They were literally sending salawat. Unironically,
wow.
They were like you know, it's like little, some of them are cultish. I mean, not all of them, be fair to them. But even, I'm saying, in their rebellion against Islam, they're just doing Islam again. Or even the fact that Reza Pahlavi is their savior. That's a very 12er specifically thing. The idea of the Munji, the savior, is going to come. It's just, instead of being the 12th Imam, it's just this, you know, overweight guy in DC or wherever, Maryland. So
That's quite amusing,
Yeah,
actually. So going, I guess, transitioning to this
sure.
topic of protesting. So tell me, like, why did this happen at this time? Like, a lot of people think that, okay, well, these protests or riots, this is just a CIA, Mossad psyop. Like, this is, and clearly you can't deny that there are
Mm.
aspects of that. Like, they were trying to take advantage of, but the sentiment, like in Iran, is it coming to like a boiling point, like because of the economy being in the
Mhm.
toilet? Like, what is actually happening on the ground that people don't know in the West? Is it
Mhm.
really boiling over, or is that just hyped up by Western media because they want
Yeah.
to overthrow the Islamic Republic there?
You know, it's so interesting. Just a pure act of fate. I had to end my phone call with someone in Iran to jump on this. A friend of mine finally got through with a landline minutes bundle he bought. You know, one of those ancient things like that
Yeah.
you buy 500 minutes for $5 or something. He bought one of those to call me just to see what's going on with the internet and whatnot. So I was refreshing the internet. I was messaging people for him saying, "Hey, so and so says this." He's an Iranian American friend of mine who's just been in Iran for the last 6 months or something. And he told me basically what happened. He was in Tehran the whole time. So his perspective was that basically the reporting initially was very accurate, that the Bazaris came out and protested because the currency situation makes it impossible to do business. Because how do you import something and transfer the currency and then you sell it? And in that time, the currency has shifted so much that you can't keep track of prices. So I did economics. The use of money is as a store of value, which is useless if you have insane inflation. We have the worst in the world, the lowest currency right now. And it's also not a unit of measurement because you can't keep track of prices. So it doesn't really do much. You can't store your money. You can't use it to buy anything. You can't use it to denote prices. So these bazaris came out, which is a semi-common occurrence nowadays. And they just did they closed all their shutters and they did an etisab. They did a strike. And I saw a few of them when I lived in Iran. I remember I went to the bazaar one day. I didn't know it was a strike. I commuted the whole way to the center of the city and it was just empty. There was just one guy selling like fruits. I was like, okay, great. So that started, and that always spreads to other places. So then students started protesting, and then it spread to the streets. And usually it happens that protests start with a particular issue and they're more peaceful, and then it becomes generalized and then just about overthrowing the government and more violent as time goes on. And that's why usually in the first or second days, there isn't really much of a response from the state. And then as time goes on, as it's more threatening to the state, there is a response. So they do start because of legitimate grievances. The economy is in the toilet. If you go on Persian Instagram reels, whatever is left from 10 days ago, there's nothing new on there, unfortunately. People are complaining. I remember when I was a kid, a Bastani Kim, a one little chocolate ice cream bar was 100 toman, sad tak toman. Now those are 100,000 tomans. So if you can imagine from 100 to 100,000, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Google it. The most worthless currencies, ours is the most worthless. So there's that. And the problem is that the Israelis finished at the 12-day war. Probably they asked for a ceasefire because they weren't expecting how capable Iran's response would be, but they weren't satisfied. They want the state gone. So they probably told themselves, we'll circle back and we'll instigate instability or we'll wait for the right moment or something like that. And my father actually told me this. At the end of the 12-day war, he said, this isn't over. They're going to try to instigate this further. And my father actually lived in Iran and happened to be abroad when the war happened, just traveling. And then he went back to America and said, I'm going to wait to see what happens because some other nonsense, he's lived in Iran up until then, some nonsense is going to happen. So Israel takes this, seizes this opportunity to insert bad actors. So, you see videos of armed gangs of people with masks and Kalashnikovs going into government buildings, setting them on fire one after another. In previous protests, you didn't really see that. You didn't see mosques and like ministries set on fire. Mutual combat. There's some videos of people with guns fighting back, like cities being taken over. And now, of course, some people cheer this on because they say, okay, the government will collapse. But they also don't think about that. That's how the Syrian civil war started, is having these armed instigators. And I would say, as an Iranian who wants the best outcome for Iran, having these armed instigators funded by groups that just want Iran destabilized is bad for us ultimately. So yeah, you did see videos, and I had a friend who called me as well saying he saw what he thought was mutual combat in a way that he had not seen. And he said he believed 10,000 people died in Tehran alone, which is very believable if you have a mutual combat scenario where the state and some of the protesters or bad actors or whoever are shooting and battling like a street war. That's believable for sure. So we are facing a very dangerous kind of possible situation.
Yeah, so that's very surprising, like 10,000. But if they're getting these weapons from outside and there are these armed shipments, then do you think that things could escalate? Like, could become like a Syria situation? Like, it seems like the government is in control now. But do you think things could pop off again in this way, or?
Well, I think the government thinks so because that's why the internet is still closed, presumably, right? I mean, otherwise, why wouldn't they just open it? They're probably worried that directives or communications, or maybe, I mean, some would say people will see what they did. I mean, we basically know what they did at this point. But I think there is a reality that, you know, outside actors who don't want what's best for Iran and Iranians will instigate violence and will try to create a serious situation. The issue in Syria is that the part of the army defected and became the Free Syrian Army. Now, we don't really have anything like that in Iran. And I talked about it in my video, Why Iranian Protests Fail and Continue to Fail, because there isn't really like a sweet deal for them. The deal is you defect, but then we'll kill you at the end anyway, so why would they defect? So I don't think, unless you see cracks form, anything of that sort will happen. But outside actors will take advantage of any situation. And you see some people who are... or maybe they're critical of 12ers, or because Iran is, you know, has this geopolitical stance they don't like, they cheer this stuff on. And I always remind them, look, man, these people, like even secular Persians, these people are like ISIS units in so many words, or Al-Qaeda units, a lot of them. These groups that are doing like full-on armed resistance, a lot of them are like these Takfiri, like Wahhabi type of groups that are based like in the borders of Pakistan and the borders of Turkey, and Sunni powers like Pakistan, like Turkey, don't want these people kicking around. Like this is not just like, oh, you know, the 12ers are getting owned. These are people who are just out to destabilize and destroy. Like these are people who blow up Hanafi mosques in Afghanistan because they're not Salafi for some reason. Like that's the type of people that would go around shooting people in Iran. I mean, these are not like peace-loving people. They're blowing stuff up. They're doing mass shootings. We've seen it before. When I lived in Iran, a military parade had 50 civilians and military members gunned down in Ahwaz, and they were like separatists who are hiding out somewhere. I mean, this is scary stuff.
So are the secularists or the monarchists, are they conscious of the fact that a lot of the people that are doing they're on the same side as the Salafists or Wahhabists?
Their prepackaged answer with respect to Israel as well, because some of them do acknowledge that Israel maybe doesn't have our best interests in mind. I don't believe it or not. They'll say we just happen to have the same desire, and it just like tasodofi, just like in a car crash way. Our desires just crashed and intersected. Coincidentally, our desires intersect. So yeah, we know that Israel maybe would balkanize Iran if it could. But as long as they get rid of the government, we'll prevent that. And we know that, you know, these Ahwazi guys and these Baloch guys aren't just happy to see the state go. They also want, you know, to like go in Tehran and blow stuff up. But they'll say, okay, but at least they're fighting the state. Now, what I'll tell them is that's a very short-sighted way to think about politics. I think that, you know, Syrian civil war style behavior, territorial disintegration should just be off the table. It shouldn't even be, because that's what they say about 79. They say, oh, the stupid leftists, because they're right-wing usually, like right-wing secularists, the stupid leftists allied with the Islamists saying, once we get rid of the Shah, then we'll take care of these Islamists. Like the Soviets will back us. That's probably what they were thinking. And that didn't happen. Well, I will tell them, what if you become those people? What if you ally with forces who are anti-Iran, who want to just destabilize and destroy the country, and then you're like a Syrian scratching your head saying, geez, how did this happen to our country? You know, just like destroyed. There's no power. It's like territorial disintegration, Israelis taking out their defense. I mean, it's not a simple situation.
In your analysis in the same video that you just referenced that you published on why the protests fail and why they'll continue to fail. So one of the main issues is that they don't have an ideology. And this is something that I've been trying to figure out for a long time. Like the only thing that I understood about like these groups, the secularists, the monarchists, the ones that really lick the boots of the Pahlavis, I thought the only thing that they really care about is, oh, hijab is being enforced. Like women can't like show their, you know, their blonde highlights in the streets. And this, this requires regime change. But is there more to it than that? Like it seems to me like a lot of these in the diaspora, especially because that's what I have experience with, is that they have this kind of arrested development. Like they still are in a very like a teenager mindset.
That's
like,
true.
We just want freedom and free love and
All
drugs
right,
and
yeah.
like that's like it doesn't seem more developed than that, more mature than that. Like there's no actual ideology, and you refer to this in your video, but can you expand on that? And
Yeah,
is there actually
absolutely.
more to it, or am I just straw manning them?
No, there's that, and there is some other stuff as well. So what I would say is that decades ago, that whole like free love and they're repressive was very appealing when the boomers were solidly in control and they were in like their 50s and 60s. In the 90s, 2000s, people really loved that stuff, and they loved in that era of Afghanistan, Iran, the stories of the women and all that. It was very appealing in that moment. And then in 2009, electoral theft is also appealing. And even with mass simony, again, women's stuff is appealing. But that stuff is kind of running out. I tweeted this. It angered a lot of people. The West is kind of moving in a post-liberal direction. They don't care about Middle Eastern states. They don't really care about. They're kind of pushing back against women's rights discourse in America, let alone in Iran. So that kind of, like you said, arrested development, like teenager-ish. Oh, we're not free. You don't let us have free love and dogs and stuff. People in America don't care. Like they're not going to do a regime change war so that you can own dogs in Tehran. And like Noor Pahlavi was saying, they hate dogs. They won't even let us own dogs. It's like, all right, relax.
But that's not even true, right?
Yeah, you can own dogs.
You can own dog, and when you go to some
Yeah.
of these places in Iran, I haven't been there in 20 years, but if you go to over 20 years, but if you go and see videos on YouTube where they're just walking in the bazaar, and they're recording on a GoPro, it's like women are dressed like more promiscuously than if you go to like the average mall in the US. So, and no one is saying anything. Like no one is. I'm like, come on, let's see some.
It's like Iran is very confusing, and it's very unclear what the rule ever is. Someone told me this when I was living there. They said you need to know one thing in Iran. I was arguing about what a law was. He said there's no law. What's enforced in the moment is the law. So it's possible to go to a cafe in northern Tehran where the business owner is in good with the local cops. So they can secretly serve alcohol, and the women don't wear hijab, and it's de facto a club. And there's a park in northern Tehran where there's a dog park. But then in another neighborhood where the locals are more conservative, if you walk around without a hijab, the local Basij guys might tell you, hey, what are you doing? Or if you try to walk your dog there, they might hassle you. So there are areas where it's even more liberal than maybe New York City, even, you'd be surprised. And there are areas where it looks more like Afghanistan than northern Tehran, even within Tehran itself. So that's why it's so hard to just say there's like one simple answer. You can flip a switch. And America's similar in some ways, right? Like you have parts of America that look one way and you have parts of America that look another, and it's hard to say that there's just like one America. But what I will say is to give them credit, not just the blonde highlights and all that, but it is true that generally Iran is like other Middle Eastern states where people are not economically growing, they're squeezed. There is just like an arbitrariness to how things are applied. There is a general kind of lack of civil liberties. But what I would say is that is mainstream for the region, by the way. It's like you don't have free speech in Dubai either. And you can kind of get a hint at what Iranians really like by the fact that they love the Emiratis so much. They really just want to be economically upwardly mobile and feel respected and feel normal. I think those are the biggest things. If Iran cannot be a pariah state and just be like a normal country where people don't ask you like, oh, are you going to get executed there? Just like perceive you as like Turkey or something. And also just have an economic life. Most people will be fine, I think, a lot of people. Of course, there'll be those who will still hate the hijab and still hate the Sharia application. But I think those are the ultimate issues. But there is just a general, just like, oh, the internet doesn't work. Oh, the power is going to go out again. Oh, there might be a war. It's just not a well-functioning place in this moment. So that's why you find even now the protests have a broader range of support than in the past. Like in the past, when it was about hijab, some people want the hijab law. Even some people look secular have confided to me. You'd be shocked who say, yeah, I prefer this. This is better. We're Muslims. Even they look secular. But now it's like you're just getting squeezed from all directions. There's no internet. They're going to bomb you. The currency's in free fall. Like they're really twisting the vice grip on Iran right now. So it's beyond. I used to make fun of them before. You're showing your blonde hair and you want your dog. But now it's like you look at the situation, you think like, oh man, this is and that's why I'm so worried. Before I was in Iran when Mahsa Amini happened, and people were saying, "Oh, the government's going to collapse," and I'd be like, "Okay, relax, it's not going to happen." But now it's like, it's like Iraq in the '90s almost. It feels like.
Do you think that? I mean, this is the calculation that the West was making. Should we, like with the U.S. striking, and bombing Iran is like, will that cause like that kind of pressure if we escalate it? Is that only going to create more nationalistic support for the government
Yeah,
there?
it's true.
And like when Iranians have their backs against the wall, they're going to actually double down and they're going to be more aggressive and support the government as opposed
Yeah.
to. And you'd see some of the like women without hijab, for example, seemingly secular, who are now like protesting for Khamenei, for
Right.
Ayatollah
Yeah.
Khamenei, and saying
Yeah.
we're because we don't want the U.S. We've seen what Israel has done to the Palestinians, and I do think there is that kind of counter dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. You will find people for nationalistic reasons, because they're leftist, because they're third worldist, because they're anti-imperialist, who would find common cause with the government on the issue of defending Iran's sovereignty, territorial integrity, preventing a foreign war. And I think there were also people who on the first day were very happy when the 12 people were struck. I had people on WhatsApp saying, this is great, it's going to be over. And then by day 10, they're calling me saying, my childhood school was bombed, and my neighbor and my childhood schoolmate who lived next to the door to the school died. So that same person who on day 1 was saying, dude, be happy, on day 10 called me crying. And he said, I just threw up, I'm losing my mind. He was my best friend in elementary school and middle school, and now he's dead, and the school I went to is dead, and my neighborhood is destroyed. So people's opinions can change based on what happens. The other issue is the moment finished. Like on Saturday and Sunday, when the protests were at their apex, when the majority of the carnage was happening, I think if America had even done a symbolic strike, it might have given more qawwat qalb, as we say, like heart strength to the protesters. Like, oh, they got our back. I mean, Trump said help is coming, and he didn't. But now, I think when there's no protests, just a symbolic strike like they did that in the beginning of the 12-day war, wouldn't do anything. And they waited 3 days and they responded. Even if they struck the supreme leader, they'll just appoint another one like they did before when the last one died. And this one has been almost killed before. It's nothing new. They've killed Qasem Soleimani before. The type of strike that would be required to impose regime change would have to fully cripple the country, like destroy all defense capabilities, destroy all communication capabilities. Like to impose it from above would destroy the country. Maybe worse than Syria is today. You'd have to just drop bombs and bombs and bombs. No one would stand for it. So even these monarchists would say, okay, relax. So it's not possible to impose it from above. There's no appetite for boots on the ground. It needs to happen internally. And there's just no vision for what would come about. What would be the plan? I mean, Reza Pahlavi says de-Baathification won't happen. Somehow I don't trust him. You know, he recently said in a video, "Na faramush mikonim, na mibachshim." We won't forget, we won't forgive. So who am I supposed to believe in this midst? Anyway, it's unfortunate, the situation.
Do you think that, what do you think is going to be the next move by the West? Do you think that they're going to do a kind of boots on the ground or strike? Because I bet they have the same analysis as you. Like they're banking on riots and arming them with AK-47s and maybe like small drones, but that hasn't gone anywhere. So what's their next move?
Yeah. I think Iran is sufficiently worried or weakened, or is on the back step to where they're not kind of worried anymore. Israel apparently was the one who told Trump not to strike because they were worried Iran would strike them again and that they didn't want to deal with it, or they weren't ready quite yet. So I think they're happy with the situation, that Iran is on the back step, that it's not going to do anything offensive, that it's kind of internally delegitimized a bit. And I think that Pakistan and Turkey and the Khalij countries don't want the Iranian state to be fully dismantled. So they will step up and say no. And that's probably part of the reason the strike also didn't happen. So I think maybe they'll just pursue the strategy of just chipping away, more sanctions, more when actual protests happen, turn them into violent riots or instigate the violence to be kicked up. And I think they did succeed in poisoning the social environment to quite a high degree, actually. Like after Mahsa, it got pretty poisoned, but I think now it's just really bad. I wouldn't want to go and hear what people have to say up close. I'm sure everyone's beyond upset. And it just seems like the divide between the state and the people is just growing by the day. And I don't think anyone's willing or able to reconcile that somehow. Like maybe you would just need a new generation to come. Maybe this generation is just cooked. These people who fought in the war and they saw the revolution, they're too grisly, they're too uncompromising. I
Wait,
don't
which
know.
revolution? You mean the 79 revolution?
Yeah, so like the generation that saw the revolution, the supreme leader and people who were his age and a little younger than, and people from like ages 60 to 80, basically, who like actually remember it and were at an adult age. Like for example, Mr. Marandi is commonly brought onto Western TV shows because he's like the most eloquent, English fluent, kind of like firm government supporter, non-compromising type. I mean, this is a guy who was gassed in the fields of Iraq as a teenager. Is he just going to compromise and say, oh, okay, fine, take the country back? I mean, these are people who went through hell to achieve their revolution and actually to hold on to the country. I don't think it's so simple for those people to just say, you kind of need like the Deng Xiaoping moment. You need like the old guard to age out and pass away, and like a new, younger, more pragmatic people. And this is why realistic analysts who talk about Iran say more realistically, like someone from within the security or military apparatus, like a RGC general who's more pragmatic, who's more less dogmatic, more compromising, will like emerge from the inside as like a de facto shot caller for the government, even if they maintain like a supreme leader infrastructure and there's like a guy called the supreme leader, someone who's pragmatic, who has like a more of a, ears to the street, more money oriented, will come and kind of steer the ship. Because this current ideologically oriented bent is not serving them well, I don't think.
Well, how would that solve the economic issues though? Because as long as Iran, unless Iran, this hypothetical leader is going to bend the knee to America and Israel, they're going to have the same pressure coming, the same sanctions coming. So that wouldn't really solve that issue, right? Like that's the thing. Like that's a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. Part of the issue is that, I mean, we've had the sanctions before, but the economic situation wasn't as catastrophic as now. And one reason is that Trump is really, again, putting the screws in. Another thing is that they say that the internal corruption is getting worse, actually. So I wonder if there's a situation where there's a more pragmatic or compromising American government and Iran does what China does, which is like more effectively polices corruption and theft from within the state, that the economy can stabilize and become breathable again. But I think you're right. Without ultimately resolving this America-Israel thing, there's just no way. Somehow I wonder if the Palestinians and the Israelis can somehow, I don't think it's possible anymore, come to some sort of amicable. One would have wondered in an ideal timeline if they could have just like struck a deal and there would be two viable states. And Iran, because Iran's official position about Israel is not, believe it or not, that Israel should be destroyed. The official position is that Iran will go with whatever the Palestinians go with. So let's say the Palestinians say, you know what, khalas, we're happy. We got our state. We got right to return for the refugees. We have a border. We can police our own border. We have like sovereignty, territorial integrity. We have resources. And the Iran can say, okay, fine, we're happy. And then Israel can say, okay, Iran's not a threat. And then everyone can just live. But it seems that that window probably closed.
Yeah, I don't even think that was ever on the table. I think that Israel always had plans for taking over the entire region and becoming this hegemony, regional power, now global power, if they're able to actually do regime change in Iran. So I don't even think that they ever had intentions to make a deal with the Palestinians.
That's why Turkey and the GCC also at the last minute stepped in and prevented the regime change operation, is because it said, wait a minute. Iran is just the first and next on the chopping block. Then it comes Turkey. Then it comes the Khalij. Like, I mean, Israel, Qatar's tried so hard to be a middleman, and they bombed Qatar anyway.
I think that was the wake-up call, like for the GCC. They saw that, even Qatar is not safe because the U.S. was supposed to be the guarantor that Israel is not going to come and attack you and do what they did to the Palestinians to you Gulf Arabs. The U.S. was supposed to be the shield, and they didn't come through. Israel is hitting Doha. And so that's why they have to make a deal with Pakistan, with Turkey. Like, okay, we need a kind of alliance defensive pact here. And I think that if Iran, they realize now more than ever, if Iran is taken out, they lose a lot of... they're next on the chopping block. Yeah, that's a good point. So what... in your ideal vision, like what should Iran look like in terms of government? Like if I can give
this is such a big can of worms. So I mean, ultimately, this is just theorizing, right? The people in Iran should decide. People who are only citizens of that country. I mean, I'm a dual citizen. I'm always kind of halfway there. But people who are in Iran, who are only Iranians, they should have the ultimate say. I'll start with that. But I would say this might shock everyone. I would just go back to an Islamic monarchy system. Like our indigenous form of governance, basically. So Pahlavi, unfortunately, is not the man. This might shock everyone to their core. I would love to be a Pahlavist if he was a trad Islamic monarch, if he actually wanted to have a secular monarchy and then have the ulama class, and they would have some sort of arrangement where he's the secular ruler and the ulama advise him and he takes direction from them sometimes, and sometimes he breaks with them. What Iran has had for thousands of years, in effect. When it was the Sassanid time, that was how it was. You had the priests and the secular king, and Islam picked that system up from us. And the Khilafah, there is no secular ruler. It's just the ruler. He's the caliph, like what the Ottomans have. But the Iranian system, which the influence like the Abbasids and all other kind of Islamic monarchies, was that you had a king, but he never really claimed to be a caliph. He would never say, I'm the caliph. Like maybe sometimes they'd say, but they didn't really believe it in their heart of hearts. Right? The Ottomans did, but the Iranians and the Iranian influenced ones like Mughals, Central Asians, they always had a secular Khalifa, a secular sultan, and the ulama represented the vanguard of Islam. And this is what we had until Reza Shah disrupted this relationship, like Ataturk, by purging the political power of the ulama. I wish we could go back to that. I wish we could have a king who was a figurehead of the country, who was kind of secular in nature. And by that, I don't mean not religious, but what I mean is he doesn't claim anything religious. He's just like, I'm a dude, I'm a Muslim guy, I'm the king. And then we had the ulama who would run Islam, and the ulama would have kind of an advisory situation. Now, let's add a bit of realism. We're in the modern world. People have to feel like they have a say. We can't just let them think they're being ruled over. So you would have like some sort of constitutional monarchy that's Islamicate. So you have the ulama advising the monarch, who's like the spiritual father and leader of the country in effect. But then you have like a prime minister who can take the L's and make the decisions that are unpopular. Some Arab countries, I think, kind of effectively would have functioned this way until very recently. So something like that, I think. And Iranians would like it. Say, oh, wow, we have our king back. So the seculars could say, wow, we have our king. And the Muslims can be happy that he has a good relationship with the ulama and it's a Muslim country. And there could be like some stupid prime minister who gets voted and gets yelled at when he screws the budget up. And maybe that would work. I don't know. That's my view. I would hope we could do this.
Yeah, that's an interesting view there. And do you think that in terms of like social values, like socially, like what direction should Iran go? Because this is maybe like I said in the intro that you're a man of many contradictions.
Yeah.
And so like you are traditional in look and in your many of your views, but also you have a appeal with, like, I'm sure many of your students are more liberal, they're more secular.
Yeah, absolutely.
They also appreciate you. So, but Iran as a society, if it goes more traditional, then it's going to be naturally more socially conservative. It's going to be like more misogynist. It's going to be like more quote unquote repressive because of those quote unquote conservative values. Which direction do you think, as an ideal, should Iran be moving in? Clearly, it's moving in the liberal direction, just like the rest of the world. Even though, as you said, like we're entering a post-liberal world order, there's still a lot of momentum, right?
Right. Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Of just internet and what people can consume online. So socially, things are just moving in the same direction of more and more liberal values. Do you think that should be curbed? Do you think that that should be reversed? Like, what is the...
You'd be surprised. Iranians themselves say that it should be curbed in Iran, even so-called secular people, because it's important to understand Iranians, a lot of times, they just feel undignified by the way that Islam has been shown to them. So a lot of people maybe even would have been hijabis, would prefer to take it off because they say, oh, well, you like kul mamnu marqub, as Arabs say. You tell me not to wear it or to wear it, fine. I will actually not wear it now because how dare you tell me? You know how Iranians were a little haughty and a little egotistical, stubborn. So you have a lot of people who resist the zawahir, the exteriors of Islam, because they just hate being told what to do and they don't like the state for whatever reason. But if you look at the core of Iranian society and you ask secular Iranians, you just like do a Hamid Porsi, do a poll and say, would you rather your kids marry someone you approve of or disapprove of? Would you rather your kid marry someone from your millah, you know, if you're an Azeri 12er or 12er, or an Armenian? Or would you rather your kids, you know, be a reputable, dignified person? Or do you want them to, you know, dance on TikTok or something like that? Do you want your kids to listen to you and to raise, you know, smart, studied, studious, well-being kids, or do you want them to like, play football and ride motorbikes? Like the answer would always be the Islamicate conservative answer, basically, right? So
Well,
the only difference is if you call it Islam, they'll say, no, 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 I'm not one of those brown people. But if you just remove the layers and just stick to the core issues, Iranians basically already all agree with these things. Like even those secular looking Iranians, like the women who don't dress like with Islamic norms, if you ask them, do you want to date, indefinitely, or do you want to have like a husband and be a stay-at-home wife? 95% of them want a husband and to be like a stay-at-home wife, ultimately like raise kids. Iran is a traditional society. So I think that if we didn't make Islam a culture war, and if we weren't victim to, the other forces at play that want to poison Iran and destroy Iran and poison the relationship between the people and each other, if those weren't there, we would just be like Pakistan. We would just be like Iraq. Again, our immediate neighbors are just religious and conservative in a natural indigenous way. And I think Iranians are too. It's just we need to give them breathing room and remove this culture war, and then they will just naturally go back to that medium, that happy medium, if that makes sense. So I think ultimately we will see it, and not because I want it even, but because the Iranians themselves think this way. Even in America, they behave in conservative ways. They get married. Even secular Iranians, you mentioned you have secular relatives, I do too. They get married, actually, even though they're secular. They want their kids to behave in ways that are like recognizable to us. They don't want their kids to run around and be in the streets every day. So Iranians, I think their baseline. I mean, we are people who created Zoroastrianism. It's such a strict religion. We enforce the strictness. I mean, look at Hanafi Islam. The most strict gender segregation in the Muslim world is from Hanafis. Hanbalis are a very small percent of the Gulf. Like in the indigenous, like big cities, in Turkey, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, in Iran historically, where did the burqa come from? We made the burqa. Like we're very conservative people temperamentally. So,
yeah, that's true.
anyway.
That's true, but I think that there might be a generational issue because, like, the kind of people that you're talking about that will say, "Yeah, I want my kids to get married," or they'll get married themselves. It's more like the over 50, maybe the boomer generation. But when I see like the younger, that their children or grandchildren, it's actually pretty radical. Like the level of
that's true.
liberalization,
That's true.
even in like Texas or in some of these conservative parts of the US, more conservative, it's actually shocking. Like they'll get tattoos,
That's true.
They'll dye their hair, like be a lesbian, like it's and there's like no sense of any, even though they're Iranian, like they know that they're Iranian, but they just don't, they want to just burn the whole system down. Like even the idea of tradition viscerally disgusts them.
Yeah, there is a big project in the modern world to make people hate and be grossed out and think it's idiotic and backwards to have like any type of traditional notion. I mean, even I get flack for this. It's so funny. There's no winning if you're a traditional person. Like I'm very open-minded. I'm nice. People that, like you just described, come to our classes every week. You would be really surprised. I mean, maybe you could just see videos of them, and they're very nice and welcome. No one ever makes them feel not welcomed. I mean, we're reading traditional Islamic texts. Maybe the people who wrote the books wouldn't like them, but we're nice to them. But they still will say, "Oh my God, you're evil, traditional. You're so mean and bad." But I think ultimately, people see the wages of living a life that's disconnected from traditional norms and values and religion, etc. Like they're seeing the backlash in the West is coming from this century of liberalism. And I love that when people talk about it, they don't realize how long it is. They think, oh, it's like since the 90s, no, it's like going back to like the 10s and the 20s, really, if you want to talk about like social change. So in this last 100 years, they're saying, okay, no one's getting married, no one's having kids, we have demographic collapse, everyone's angry and upset and just living on the internet, we have just total societal disintegration, and people are waking up and going to Catholic Mass, they're becoming Orthodox, they're becoming more connected to spirituality, divinity, being in awe of something. And I think we might just have to see a delayed version of that in Iran. That in Iran, the young people might have to turn to liberalism and modernity, and then have the birth rate collapse and have the social situation be poisoned, and then a new generation, the Gen Z of Iran, in like one generation or two, will get up and be like, "Wait a minute, the way our ancestors lived was more healthy, is more connected." Even in my own lifetime, like growing up, we had big family gatherings. Now my cousins, my second and third cousins, a lot of them are divorced. A lot of them have only one child. And even people in our generation are saying, dude, this is not the way we were living before. This is not fun. Everyone has one kid. Everyone's getting a divorce. We don't gather anymore. We all move to different cities. So even in our own lifetime, people are regretful of this move. So I hope that we won't even have to wait a generation or two, that people will say, wait a minute, just because the government forced us to wear a job doesn't mean we have to like set fire to our whole society and all of our values.
Sure. That makes sense. For like having children, so Iranians, like speaking of the second, third generation, our children, like, would you want to raise children in the West? Would you want to go back to Iran or somewhere else? Like, how do you envision raising up the next generation so they have the right values, they can have a sense of identity and not be like these schizophrenic, lost people that we're talking about?
You're right. I worry. I've thought about going back to Iran up until recent events, just with the internet and being sanctioned. And if you try to do anything there, they'll freeze your bank account. It's funny. If you have like the alt-right opinions, you get this treatment. And if you're Iranian, you get this treatment. So I'm one of the only people who can relate to, you know, whatever, like the Fuenteses and Tates or whatever, because I've also had bank accounts frozen and I've also had my websites removed or blocked, like Patreon banned me, PayPal removed me, my bank accounts were frozen. Not because I'm like an alt-righter or anything, but just because I'm an Iranian, because I was in Iran, living in Iran. And I think people who hated me, because since years ago, the secular Persian Twitter has hated me. I think they reported me. They screenshotted my profile and they sent it to those banks saying he lives in Iran permanently, and they're like, okay, we can't do business with you anymore. So living in Iran is difficult for me for that reason. And I've thought about going to Turkey because I'm half Turkic. My mom's Azeri. She speaks the language. I speak at a very basic level. I need to get good at it, actually. But they have kind of the same norms and ethics. You have the kind of Sufi influence, Hanafi, traditionalist Islam. You have Rumi lovers everywhere there. They're very nice people. They have good adab. It's a very chill society. They don't bother anyone. Very kind of stable. It's decent time zones. I've thought about Turkey, but I just feel like not just religiously, even just socially and culturally, I feel so disconnected from America now. You know, like it's so tiring to have to just explain norms that were just normal 20, 30 years ago. Just the society has changed, the culture wars, the drama, even something as unrelated to Islam as the racial climate. It's so dragging and so tiresome. It's just living in this society is just really a drag nowadays.
What do you mean racial climate?
Just like everyone's on edge. You can't say anything. You can't make a joke. You have to constantly walk on eggshells. It's just like everything with gender, with race, with economics, with the culture wars, with politics. Everything is just so tiring. Everything is a war. It feels like it's drummed up on purpose to just distract us from whatever is happening and whatever they're engineering for us in the world. But it's just so refreshing to go in the street in a country like Turkey or Iran or Jordan or Kuwait, the Muslim countries I lived in, Egypt. Just like everyone has the same norms. Everyone just kind of has the same religious belief generally. Secular people are respectful. You know, there's no like giant conflict in the air about who's an immigrant and who's not. And oh my God, did you say the right term? And it's just so, I insulate myself in America, honestly. I barely go out. I barely make friends with people who aren't kind of a similar background to me, so we share understandings. It's just so tiring to live in a society where everything is a conflict. Everything is a culture war. Everything is oh my God, you didn't say this the right way. And it's just like, I'm so tired of it. I used to censor myself to kind of avoid annoying people for these considerations, but I just can't live this way, man. Like, I want to just go out and just be normal and just breathe and not have to worry about, oh, this is happening. Trump did this. Trump said that. We're going to go to war over this. You know, like you live in Istanbul. It's like, oh, I'm just drinking my coffee. Yeah, the inflation's bad, but like, okay, whatever. Life is normal. It's like a normal life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's things are getting really, I think, feisty in the US, and economically things are also taking a downturn. So it might be just not worth staying here, like economically. Then why else would you stay? Like the culture is really disintegrating.
No, absolutely.
As you're mentioning, and it's like the safety issue. I don't know where you live. If safety is a
I live in
concern.
Harlem, New York, so I'm very acutely. I was on the subway train and it broke down for 30 minutes yesterday. And there was a guy who was homeless who was just screaming, running around up and down, throwing stuff, screaming, shouting. He wasn't harming anyone. He was clearly just mentally unwell. But I was just sitting there thinking, oh, if I had a child right now, I'd be very worried. So, I mean, I'm from Detroit and my wife is from Upper Manhattan, Harlem area. So both of where we're from is like that. And you mentioned children. I didn't directly answer. I'm also worried, what languages will my kids speak? Will they grow up hearing Azan? Will they have any cultural influence from Islam? You know, will they just be like Americans and have nothing? Say like, oh, you know, like I met a lot of Persians, and I remember I met a girl in school who's I think her name was like Haley Alawi or something like that. Alavi. She was like, oh yeah, like they called her out in school in like 6th grade, like, Haley Alavi. And it's like, Alavi, what the heck is that? And I looked at the list, the roster, and it was like, I was like, oh, Alavi, are you Persian? So I went up to her, I said, are you like Iranian or Turkish? She's like, oh yeah, like I think my grandpa's dad was like Iranian, but then he like moved to Russia and then he like moved to Germany. So I was like, will that be my descendants? So they're just like, oh yeah, I think I like, yeah, this book. Oh my God. Like they'll look around and they'll find, this is my book, by the way, it's a Rumi translation. It's like, they'll dust it off and be like, what's this, mom? And they'll be like, oh yeah, my grandpa, he was like a Muslim, you know, that was a religion back then. And like, you know, he in America, and he was like a Sufi, and like, yeah, he had this book. I don't know. I didn't really hear much about it. He was old when I was born and he died. So like, that's depresses me to think about that future. So I don't know.
Yeah, it depresses me as well. Yeah, everyone go check out the book.
Thank you.
But it's a depressing thought, but I think a lot of people don't consider that when they're figuring out where to live and where to move and how to live their lives, like day-to-day lives. I mean, even you're taking steps like you dress a certain way, your house is a certain way, like or who you marry, like your wife.
Yeah.
All of those factors are make a big difference. But even then, like we have to ask ourselves, is it enough? Like with my kids, they're being homeschooled. I taught them Farsi, like they can speak Farsi, they can read and write Farsi. They have a sense of Iranian culture.
Excellent.
Obviously, they're practicing Muslims, but is that going to be enough for their children to keep on like their Islam or their identity, their heritage? It's very disturbing.
I remember one time I was going to say, moving you, it's still not enough because the West somehow finds a way to drag you back or annoy you or something. I remember you were debating someone years ago. So I've been aware of your work for a very long time. I even remember when you broke away from that. I don't want to get into it. It's not important. But I remember like when you first were appearing on Facebook and whatnot. And your videos actually were helpful in me kind of understanding liberalism and American society and atheism, because I remember I was just kind of liberal-minded person. Religion. And you kind of helped me think about these things in a more intellectual way. It's amazing. We've come full circle. Now we're speaking to each other. But I remember in a debate you had, someone said as a gotcha, and I hate these gotcha. This is one of the dumbest ones. Why don't you just go live in another place? As if just because I believe something, I can't live where I was born. But he said, why don't you live in Qatar? I think it was like David Wood or Armin Nava, one of these losers.
Yeah.
And you said, well, I'm American. Well, I have parents, family, fair. And I love that Qatar, I mean, not love, but it's just fascinating. It's too good to be true that Israel bombed Qatar. So they say, oh, go live in Qatar if you want to be a religious Muslim. And it's like, well, Israel will just bomb me there. Or go live in Iran like I did. They say, go live in Iran. Well, I did that and my bank accounts were shut and I couldn't make money to feed myself. And they say, go live in Turkey. And once Israel regime changes Iran, then Israel will regime change Turkey. Or go live in, this country and a coup will happen there. It's like you can't even pick a Muslim country because if you go there, like in 6 months, you'll get drone striked or there'll be a coup or a revolution or your bank accounts are frozen or like the secret police, the secular secret police will come at your doorstep and say, brother, why did you go to Jummah? Why did you go to Zohar? Like I had a friend, he lives in a Muslim country. I won't name it. You can guess. He went to Fajr too many times. And the secret police came to him. They said, why are you going to Fajr prayer? What are you doing at Fajr every day? He's like, I don't know. I'm a Muslim. Is that allowed here to be Muslim? Of course, brother. Of course it's allowed. You're the wrong type.
Yeah, that kind of influence is purely foreign. Like I think all of the secret police, like they monitoring Muslims, like putting this kind of pressure, that wouldn't exist. Like that kind of scrutiny on Muslims wouldn't exist if it weren't for imagine for like just China that was involved like in these countries as opposed to the US and Israel, like they wouldn't have as much of a concern. Like, okay, these are religious Muslims. What? Like all we care about is economics. But when it comes to US and Israel, like they're deeply concerned about Islamism and Muslims being too religious. So they have to pressure these governments to monitor the population and crack down. And now they are like these social credit type systems are being implemented where even like your purchases, like, oh, this this person is avoiding like buying alcohol, or like this
Yeah,
person is like what he's purchasing is giving us these signals that he might be an extremist. So it's
yeah. No, I
that's
mean,
like really, I think, the center of the problem is
yeah, no, you have
Western
to live through
influence.
these indignities. I remember one time a Tunisian said, in the era of the really strict secularism, religious Muslims used to put like you know those like thin bottles of alcohol, they're like thin and small, like for a pocket, in their glove compartment. So when they would get pulled over by the police because they had like a beard, you know, the police are suspicious. When they open to get their papers, they have to like, you know, remove the alcohol bottle to get to the papers. The cops would see there's like a fifth of alcohol. They were like, oh, okay, he's a drinker. It's okay. He's a good person. And it's like you live through these indignities as a Muslim. You go to a Muslim country. I had this experience in a few Muslim countries where I was pulled over by the police and they said, where are you from? What are you doing? You know, because of the way I look. Why are you here? How long are you visiting? Kind of very inquisitive. Like, what are you doing in the mosque? You know, why do you dress this way? Oh, you're Iranian. What is an Iranian? You're just like, dude, I'm a Muslim. Can I just live in a Muslim? Can I just be at peace here, please?
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
depressing to think about. Like, we're just used to it. Like, we're used to it, but it's kind of like an entire world has been taken away from us. Like,
no, really,
Islamic
yeah,
world.
you're
And
absolutely right. Yeah,
sometimes when I reflect on it, I feel like a deep sense of loss. Like, I can't live
it's
like
very depressing.
even my
Yeah.
father or my parents lived, or let alone my grandparents. So
No, they
tell
lived in a
me,
world that was stolen from us. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I guess the question is, how can we, for our children, like try to bring that back? I think that's like what motivates me ideologically, and that's kind of my compass for the kind of work that I do, is like trying to bring back that world for my children and grandchildren, inshallah. Okay, so I want to know more. Do you have time? Yes.
Yeah, I have time. Yeah.
Okay, because I really would like to know more about your interest in poetry, and you know why do you have classes? Obviously, you've written a book, and one book or multiple books?
So I have this one. It's 100 poems. I'm working on another book of 100 poems. The rough draft will be done in a couple days, but then I have to go over and edit it. So it's been in the works for over a year. So the old translations are old. I have to look at them again, but it's in the works, inshallah, the number 2.
So what makes, so you selected 100 the most passionate poems. So what, how do you define passion? Like,
so the publisher really did that. They said basically the only way to market this is as like a book of love poetry. So I said, okay, I'll pick 100 poems that have some sort of like romantic connotation to them. But people totally misunderstand medieval Islamic poetry. So they kind of read the superficial level of it, and they come away with one reading, but it always has a spiritual meaning to it. So that's a lot of whatever, generally speaking, whatever you see on the front or the back of a book and the first and last page is just the publisher's. This will make it sell better. But ultimately, I hope that if you read the poems, you'll see that there is kind of a deep Sufi meaning. Now, of course, it's not to everyone's liking, Sufism, which is fine. But I love Rumi. I find that, so when I was in Iran, the school said that your literature performance is terrible. They said, you're fine, you speak Persian well, whatever, like you learn to read and write, good for you, and you're doing okay academically or catching up. But, because Iran's system is different. But your poetry is terrible, like you're failing literature class. Because I never studied classical Persian. The kids had a big background and time to catch up, or they had just been learning it. So I went and bought a poetry book, and my grandmother was going to help me study. And it was Omar Khayyam's poetry. He's also very misunderstood. People say he's an atheist. In his Persian poetry, he comes off as one. But in his Arabic poetry, he's pretty orthodox, actually. So I studied with him, and then I really saw that not only was it a opening to the heart and soul of Iranians as a people, they're always quoting poetry and talking about poets. Also now I found Turks, Arabs, Pakistanis, we're all into poetry. We're always quoting poems, our WhatsApp bio, our posts. It's always this poetry, that poetry. Iqbal said, Faiz said, this guy wrote, that guy wrote. And I also found it was a window into that world that you and I lament that doesn't exist, the pre-modern Muslim world that was just ripped away from us by colonization and whatnot, that when you read those poems, you close your eyes and just think about it. It's like you're there. When I read Attar's Tadhkirat al-Awliya, his descriptions of the saints, and for some people listening, you might be interested, he has the 4 Imams in there. So when I read the life story of Abu Hanifa told in medieval Persian by Attar, when I read Ghazali's Kimya-i-Sa'adat, when I read Rumi's Masnavi, it transports me into a world that I can't access anymore. So for a moment, I can close my eyes and sit in this room and think, I'm in Baghdad with Abu Hanifa. I'm in Medina with the Sahaba. I'm in Khorasan with the scholars who made, Hanafi Islam, Bukhari, all these things. I'm with Ghazali in his room in the Karvansarai. It transports you into that world. It gives you access to their consciousness. That world we want to revive, what was it even? How do we revive it without knowing? So these texts, I mean, of course, you spend your life studying books as well, without access to these books, we don't know where we're going.
Is there a particular work or verse that really affects you in that way that comes to mind?
Not to put you on the spot. Yeah, no, it's fine. The Masnavi is probably the greatest, I think, work of Persian literature. It's Rumi's magnum opus. It's 6 books. And every few pages, there's a new tale from medieval, pre-modern Islamdom, the era of the Sahaba, because he wrote in the 1200s, the last 600 years of Islam for him, he writes about. And it just, every story transports you into a new level of wisdom. And Rumi has truly something for everything in life. There's a very funny passage where sometimes some of these like manosphere guys, or if you've spoken to them before, right? They would like some of what Rumi writes. Rumi wrote as an advice to an unmarried man. He said, women are of 3 types. He said, the women who are unmarried will be fully devoted to you if you marry them. Unmarried and never married. They will be fully devoted to you because that's all they know. And a woman who has been married but is now divorced will be halfway devoted to you because she is mentally occupied by her previous marriage and she'll be occupied by you. And a woman who has a child and a divorce will be never fully engaged with you because a mother's first instinct is to have a child. And unless she has a child with you, she will never be fully committed to you. So in Rumi, you find this like, men's advice type of thing. But then you also find, Rumi says that more than men, women share a sifa with God and that they are creators. So that when you interact with your wife, you should be in awe of this, that God has lent them one of his attributes that you don't have. And that a man who truly is possessed of a soul, who's really ensouled, he will be gentle with his wife. And that only an animal attacks his partner. So in Rumi, you find magnitudes. You find the the Sneeko Andrew Tate advice. And then you also find the blue-haired feminist as well in Rumi's book. And it's all connected to Islam. It's all coming from the Hadith, Quran. Almost every passage of Rumi, every other one, it seems, it says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الله في كتابه الكريم. Like you find Islam, the world, Persian culture, our history. It's a roller coaster. It's amazing.
Yeah, the kind of references that are found in Rumi, like if someone who's familiar with Hadith or the Quran will immediately pick up, like, okay, this is what he's referring to. So it's infused with that.
I have a whole book. I hope to God the Americans and Israelis don't bomb it, and I'll never get to it, called Ahadith Va'ayat Masnavi. And it's massive. And it talks about how it seems like every other page has a reference to the Quran or the Hadith or the stories of the Sahaba in ways that are very subtle. Even things like Bani Adam Azay Yekdigarand. That Sadi has this very famous poem. It's in the UN where he says human beings are all parts of one another. And if one piece of our human body feels pain, all the other pieces feel that pain. And if you don't feel that pain, then you are not a true human. I'm embarrassed to say I was so old when I found out, it's a hadith. I was just like flipping through a hadith like Bukhari, and it almost used the same word, udhu, like that the Prophet ﷺ said that human beings are all parts of one body. And I thought, wow, even this secular humanist Persian is getting this from Bukhari. This is a hadith here.
The hadith, I think, refers to like the ummah.
Muslims. Yeah, it does refer to the ummah, yeah. And so Sadi, maybe he made it a little bit more broad, so that's why Persians like it. But again, where does this humanism come from? Where does this mercy, this genius, this worldliness, this culture, it's all rooted in the Quran and the hadith and this civilization we call Islamdom. It's not in the ether, it's not floating, it didn't just drop from the sky. It's from this civilization. It would be a shame for us to turn away from this.
So just looking at some of the chat, someone is asking you, what's your review of Sadi's work?
Sadi is an excellent thinker. He's a great moralist. If you read the Golistan, You'll find excellent, it's probably one of the best simple books of Islamic ethics that even a child can understand. And it's like year one curriculum in madrasas in the Ottoman world, in the Persianate world, in the Mughal, Central Asian, Timurid world. Sadi's great. I think in terms of his love poetry and reflections, I think maybe Rumi and Hafiz are a bit better. But Sadi's life advice is second to none in Persian, of course. And again, it's all going back to Hadith, Quran, Islamic ethics. It's everyone benefits from it. I would recommend anyone to read the Golistan of Sadi. You won't be sorry. The advice has suited me so well in life.
It's great. And yeah, there was another chat, but I lost it where it was. It's okay. And what do you think about like the blasphemous dimensions of some of these poets, this poetry, and like how do you understand it? Like, what is the because it seems like there is this aspect of
absolutely
that the poetry there that is well known, like drunken Sufi type of statements. And I don't know, there's maybe some element of that in Rumi. It's not as
there is,
as others, but how do you explain it and understand it?
Rumi himself says in several places unambiguously that it's a metaphor. So he says, "Mastias veju as bango me maju, seek drunkenness from the divine, not from cannabis and wine," or literally from him, not from cannabis drinks and wine. And then he says in several other places explicitly that this wine, he says, "Mo mastabade na mastabade mansurim, na mastabade angurim," or something. We're drunk on Mansur al-Hallaj's wine, not from the wine of grapes. Or Ibn al-Faris says, "We were drunk before vines were created in the world." Now that explains that it's a metaphor. Why is that a metaphor? Because Sufi poetry started from court poets who did tawbah and left the court. So people like Sana'i, like not Rumi specifically, but like Sana'i, they used to write for the sultans, and the sultans had drinking parties, and again, they were secular rulers. So they would leave the court, but they would retain that imagery, which explains why you'd see talk of parties and wine and music. It doesn't make sense. Now, if that turns people off, that's fine. That's totally acceptable. Now, that's just important for people to understand it's not literal. What about the heretical elements or the deviant elements? So what I will say is their understanding of hadith was very weak. It's an unfortunate reality that the hadith studies, give credit where it's due to my Salafi brothers, they actually did instigate hadith investigation in a very good way because hadiths were very bad in the past. Al-Ghazali, as great as scholars he is, he quotes false hadith in his work because they didn't have good hadith study back then, like now with the internet and all these books, and everyone can travel everywhere, and we have more modern methods at looking at manuscripts. Manuscripts are discovered, so you find false hadiths. I can't lie, it's true. Another issue is that these people lived in a time when theological debates were still ongoing. So they are very polemical theologically against one another. Like Attar attacks the Mu'tazilites, Rumi attacks the philosopher. The Salafism wasn't really like a thing then, so you don't really find that any mention of Atharis, but they would have attacked them if they exist. They attacked the 12ers. So they have a very particular theological and aqidah, fiqh, etc. viewpoint. And they're humans, ultimately. We don't create an idol, and that's the beauty of Islam, is we don't worship humans, right? So Rumi's a human. I'm totally fine to say if you say, hey, this passage is not acceptable, that's fine. He's a person. It's just like even Abu Hanifa, I think he said, إِذَا أَصَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِي. If the hadith is correct, that's my madhab, not what I said. If you find a better hadith after I die, follow that one, not what I said. So I think Rumi, inshallah, he's a Hanafi, would probably say that same thing, that if I said something wrong in the Masnavi, ignore it and take what's good. Always, from everyone, all places. Take the good, leave the bad.
So how would you tell a beginner or advise a beginner to, if they want to really get into this kind of literature, how should they start? Obviously, you're offering courses, but beyond that, or putting that aside, like how would they go through that?
I would say they should have some sort of understanding of what the medieval Muslim world looked like. So short of me being there on my courses, I think there are texts where you can kind of immerse yourself into what is the world of sultans and of city-states and no modern borders. And, you know, before the West really took over the East, what was life like? You know, we even talk about secularism and religion. These ideas didn't exist then. What was identity? The general trajectory of the Persianate world. You kind of need to situate yourself a bit. That helps. But you can also just pick up a simple book like the Golistan of Sadi, where it's a very simple read. It's short. The anecdotes are very small, and they will give you a kind of an image into. I think maybe that's the best book to start with. Gulistan of Sadi, and it's available PDFs. It's been online for ages, and a bunch of good translations. And it's very easy and simple language, and you get a sense of what Islamic ethics, what the world was. He talks about the world, right? He's giving you anecdotes, stories. And from there, I think if you feel you want to investigate further, the Masnavi is very good. It's been translated by Alan Williams, by Javad Mujaddidi, among others. Very easy to find. And in the Masnavi, yeah, you will find some of the Sufi stuff that not everyone loves. But the good news is you can just ignore it. You know, Rumi is not giving you theological commandments. If Rumi has like a mistaken belief from someone's perspective, you can just ignore it. Just take the wisdom of the stories. Take the worldly wisdom, the nuances, the way you should approach life. And again, with all Muslims, you're always going to find good and bad. Like there's no scholar who is perfect. Even people who in hindsight we love. Imam Abu Hanifa was controversial in his life. Imam Bukhari was controversial in his life. All the four imams were controversial. They weren't always beloved by everyone. You know, you and I are controversial. so
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Sufism. So like that aspect of it, and I agree with your perspective. Like this is literature that should be studied, and every culture has poetry. And that's such an important part of even like the mu'allaqat in Arab, like in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they were studying like the mu'allaqat. And if you go to this kind of pre-Islamic poetry, I don't know how much you've studied, but it has
a little bit.
It has things that are very un-Islamic.
Of course.
In those poems are memorized. They're taught like in depth, like for the literary benefit, Muslim scholars. And you have like this poem, like some of the most famous poems that are talking about like just promiscuity, like sleeping with married women, and like seducing.
How do you understand the linguistic context of the Quran? People are shocked. You go to study Quran in like a academy, you know, like Medina or wherever, and you're reading the Mu'allaqat. They say, well, what linguistic context did some hadith, some tafsir people use the pre-Islamic poetry or the contemporaneous poetry as evidence of the meaning of words, even. So this is part of life. And again, you can ignore whatever you think is bad from it. You can just ignore it and just appreciate it as an artifact of our history. Everyone's a human. No one's perfect. Even if you hate tasawwuf, you could still just appreciate it as an artifact. Like, I'm not a Salafi by any means. I think people can see that. But I love listening to Uthman al-Khamis and the Arab scholars from all backgrounds. For a 12er guy from Najaf, whatever. You might find khair anywhere. You might find a perspective, an idea. Obviously, you have to have the right conditioning. You can't just like expose yourself to anything. It might be dangerous for your imam. But if you consider yourself an adult, you're mature, you're grounded in your belief, that you can see what people say. I mean, scholars were always doing that. They were always in conversation with one another, refuting one another. It's our civilization at the end of the day. It's part of who we are. We can't shut off ourselves from other parts of people. I don't agree with this mindset. Oh, you know, like I remember there's a guy one time abusing a guy in Turkey because he was like Shafi'i or something. He rose his hands in prayer. And I just thought, like, what wisdom is this, man? Like, so what? It's part of our civilization. You know, we don't have to, some Hanafis get a little extreme about stuff. Like, there's no reason to be abusive about it. You know?
Well, you had a very interesting comment that maybe not directly related to the Hanafis and Shafis, but I thought it was maybe you could give us a explanation of this. So you wrote this on Twitter, and you said that about Muslim gays. Okay. Muslim gays used to accept the contradiction of their sexuality and Abrahamic morality. Okay, the contradiction. They didn't try to reform Islam to make like homosexuality acceptable in Islam. The need to fix every problem, even with religion, is Anglo-Germanic Protestant in nature, foreign to the ethnic who prefers to simmer in imperfection. So this is getting into, like, we've talked about religion now, we've talked about poetry, we've talked about culture. Now we're going to get into race a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
And you can, some of your insights on race are interesting as well. Explain this to us, like, trying to reform Islam to make it LGBT friendly Islam or a feminist Islam or what have you. This is coming from like a Germanic Anglo-Germanic Protestant racial psychology.
Yeah, I mean, it's what they did with Christianity, right? The idea like, oh, we can reform religion, we can fix it, we can change it, we can constantly update it to work with whatever is out there. And that's why I feel like at Protestant churches, they're always just updating their messaging to whatever exists in the modern day. And for that reason, they're kind of going off a cliff in attendance, because people go to religion for the unchanging, the eternal, the old, the nature of it being connected to the past. They don't go there to just get whatever exists in the modern world. So this is a failing strategy, and that's why I think Muslims historically, they understood this and they said, okay, whatever is going on in the world, whatever identities are emerging or going away, Islam is just Islam, and we are who we are, and we don't have to be perfect. Neither do we have to kill ourselves to be perfect Muslims. We can try our absolute best as humans, and neither should we change Islam to be what we are. Islam can be Islam, and we can be imperfect people just striving to do our best. And I've talked to many people who privately, because I express this view, who privately come to me, people who are pious Muslims, and they say, you know, I have this particular feeling in my heart, and it is what it is, and maybe I act on it, maybe I don't. It's no one's business, and it's not the society's business, and I'm not out here to change stuff. People who are very religiously involved. And I think this is maybe a healthier attitude that we have towards life, which is that you don't have to make public everything in your heart and make everything a massive culture war. You can just kind of just live and let live. I mean, that's how it was before. We had sultans, who historians later wrote, even today in the Muslim world, who passed away, who, you know, had certain desires that Muslim society maybe doesn't love, but we also didn't bang down people's doors. La tajassasu is important to us, right? Don't spy on people's lives. There's a very famous story that I read about this from the time of the Caliph Umar radiallahu anhu, who two of the Sahaba were going around to be the Hisba at night in Medina. And they went around and they came and said, Ya Umar, you won't believe what we saw. We heard a party at such and such house. He said, okay. And he said, then we put, stacked some stuff up and looked over the fence, and we saw which men were drinking with which women. And we remember their names. So let's go, we're going to be a jallad. We're going to go lash them for drinking. And then the Caliph Omar said, I should punish you for interfering in what was behind the door. Your job is the public realm, not what exists behind their door. You're the one who's transgressing their privacy. It's between them and Allah now if they're in their home being transgressive. So we had this beautiful kind of live and let live structure where it's okay, this public realm is important. We all exist in the public realm. We need to have an agreed upon standard. But in private, you do you. That was how it was historically. Talk to your great-grandparent or grandparents, see what it was like. But now in the West, we have this idea that everything needs to always be, fully transparent. Notice they don't cover their windows. If you walk in New York and Amsterdam, whatever, like major walkable Western city, you just see straight into people's homes. There's just no window cover. They have this like transparency between public and private. So if they're privately one way, then they need to publicly express it. It needs to be a big part of their public life. So I think Islamic society had a healthier attitude to these things, Frank. And maybe that'll make some people hate me. That'll make, oh my God, he's so terrible. Can you believe he said that? But I don't know, the way that Western society is going, can any Westerner look at their society and say we're socially healthy, we're culturally doing all right? I think they're dying with these culture wars. I think our way was better, honestly.
Another aspect of it is that you preserve people's iman, because there are so many examples of these kind of ex-Muslims, they left Islam. And they said, well, why did you leave Islam? I was like, well, I believed in Allah. I believed in the Quran, everything. I prayed and fasted. But, I didn't like the fact that I can't have a dog. So I left Islam because I want to have a dog, for example. I can't have a dog in my house. It's like, is that a reason to leave Islam? Okay, it's something sinful. Can't you be a Muslim and recognize that, okay, you're sinful without just abandoning the whole faith because of that one issue? And it seems to be pretty common. And I think it's coming from this mindset that is rooted, maybe it's racial, maybe it's just cultural in the West. But I think it's important, this distinction.
There's this completely different idea of what it means to be part of a religion. So in our part of the world, religion is part of your identity. So you're just a Muslim because you're born a Muslim. Whereas in the West, they view it as something to aspire to or a state of perfection. So when you ask someone, are you a Christian? they'll say, no, I'm not. And you'll say, well, your parents were married in a church and you were baptized and you were given a Christian name. So why aren't you a Christian? Like, well, I don't go to church every Sunday and I'm not perfect, so I can't claim I am. They view it as like aspirational. So a lot of Muslims in the West are infected with this idea that Islam is also like this aspirational religion, that if you can't just be a perfect Muslim, then be an atheist. And there's also this Persian proverb, "Kafir hame ra ba kish khud pindarad," which means a disbeliever thinks everyone else is a disbeliever. So if you're not a perfect Muslim, then you might as well just stop being a Muslim. What's the point? And you have some people here come to me and they say, I'm coming to the gathering every Wednesday. I have a Rumi gathering. We sit and read Rumi. I give durus about tasawwuf and we talk and whatnot. We share a meal. And inshallah, I think it's like a halal gathering for Muslims to come to. There's no alcohol. It's like a socialization hour in Manhattan that's for Muslims. And they say, I'm in the whole. I like the whole thing, and I love Rumi, and this is great, and the praying and all that. But sometimes I drink, and I'm like, okay, you're human. You can be a Muslim still. You don't have to leave Islam just because you had an alcohol. Again, it's not good. It's haram, but we abstain from it. But that doesn't just put you in hellfire and judgment day. You don't just get kicked out of the ummah because you're not perfect. Who's perfect over here? It's a very wrong-headed way of thinking about religion. I mean, no one's a Muslim if we think that way. Who's a Muslim at that point? Everyone's imperfect.
Yeah, I think that's everyone is aspiring. Everyone is trying their best, exactly. And that's what jihad of the nafs, that is a real concept. Obviously, it's been kind of the concept of jihad has been hijacked a little bit for political reasons, but there is a sense of you struggle with yourself, you struggle with your vices, and everyone has to deal with that. That's why we have forgiveness. That's why we have tawbah. And Allah knows that we are imperfect, that we sin, and that we turn to Him in forgiveness. That's a major part of being human. It's a major part of being a Muslim. So I appreciate that perspective as well. And another along the same theme of race, I think this was a really insightful video that you put out recently about you're making this analogy with Americans viewing themselves as being temporarily poor millionaires. And that's I had heard that before, that this is how Americans view themselves. They view themselves as all being essentially millionaires. They just might be going through temporary rough times where they're working as a janitor or they're working as a garbage man or whatever. Yeah. But in the same way, Iranians are temporarily brown white people.
Yeah.
And that's was such a amazing connection that you made. Can you please explain that? How are Iranians temporarily brown?
Yeah, so it's this aspirational idea that in the past, I mean, it's a little bit of a joke. I mean, in the past, we were white, right? And then the brown Arabs and yellow Asians, Turks came in, the Mongols attacked us, and we had miscegenation happen, and then we became brown or something like a light brown, caramel color. And then after that, we hope that maybe in the future gene editing can edit away the impure genes and make us white again. So we're temporarily brown, only in this century or two left. Maybe we'll have a 1,000-year stretch of brownness. But the joke is that Iranians, we aspire to whiteness in America. We would hope that we could be counted as white or pass as white or man white time, like we would say. You check off white, right? You're white. It's thumbs up. But ultimately, we're not, right? We're an ethnic people. We are from the Middle East. We're from a hot desert country, Muslim country. Our neighbors are Pakistan and Iraq. We're not white in the social sense that Americans mean. I mean, yes, we're light-skinned. We are Indo-European. So, I mean, we're cousins with what we call white people today. But socially, the meaning of that word has a particular context in America. It means Western, European, Christian. It has a very particular context. And that's why, actually, I think Christians from the Middle East are more plausibly white passing after 1 or 2 generations. They have those similarities. But as long as you're a Muslim person, it's not possible, a Muslim background with your last name, like Muhammadi and Shahzadeh. It's funny, some of these Persians, like Alika Lebon, I think her last name is Hujjatul Islam or something like that. And I think John Cena's wife, her last name is Shahzadeh, like Sharia born. So some of their last names, it's they have a dog and they're Christian now, but then their last name will be Hadood amputation implementer or something like that. Someone should make a meme. There's the joke that Lebanese Christians, they're George or Pierre, and then their last name is very Arab. Yeah. So secular Persians, they have their name is Kevin, and then their last name is just the most it's like Ayatollah, Ayatollah Kufar executioner, it's like something crazy. So, but this also influences how Iranians place themselves. Like, and everyone laughs because we know that everyone else knows that we are brown, but they know that we're never going to be part of Europe. They know that Europe will never see us as one of them. That, like, we hope that Europeans will be so scandalized by what's happening in Iran. But I try to explain to Iranians, dude, they don't care. For them, brown people getting bombed is just another day. It's just Wednesday. They don't care. We're not white. So it causes us to view ourselves, to miscalculate improperly, view ourselves improperly, miscalculate what Iran is, what Iran can be, what it should be. And it also creates this insanity of when you think you're something that you're not, you're in this constant disconcordance. And the funny thing is that the Persians who could actually pass as white, like you are so white passing, don't want to be white. You want to be Muslim. But then the ones like Reza Pahlavi, like, have you seen this meme where Khomeini's grandson looks like an Aryan Ubermensch? Have you seen Khomeini's great-grandson?
No, I haven't seen it.
Khomeini's great-grandson, people often put him in memes of like white Muslims. He looks like the whitest, most Nordic person on earth. And then the current Pahlavi claimant is like the most Arab brown. You've seen his face. He's like so brown and so Semitic looking even.
Yeah. Yeah, facial features are very Semitic.
So you and Khomeini's grandson, who look white, want to be ethnic, want to be Muslim. You care about being who you are. But the people who look super ethnic are like, no, we are like French, but in Middle East. And it's like, no, you're not.
No, that's funny. I didn't know that his great grandson looked Nordic. Is that because of mixing or Khomeini?
No. It's basically just
Let me look it up.
Genes just mix around in weird ways. But if I send you a photo of him, you would think he's just like the whitest white guy. Here, I will WhatsApp this to you, and if you could put it on the stream, I think everyone will find this exceedingly funny.
Let me.
And he used to be a bit of like a well-liked person before the vibes with the government got a little bad. But here, great-great-grandson. There's a picture of him at Hajj where he just looks like a Bosnian guy. He doesn't look Middle Eastern.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
he
so
kind of looks like Khomeini actually.
He does,
Have
but
you
he
seen
looks so
younger
white.
pictures of Khomeini?
Yeah. Anyway,
that's actually very interesting. Hold on, I'll pull it up.
His descendants, they're so white looking. It's actually kind of cartoonish. Like you couldn't make it up. Oh man.
Where'd it go?
Anyway, so race is ultimately what you make of it. This guy, he looks white, but he's the grandson of the Ayatollah who founded the Islamic Republic. So, race is ultimately, it's not in our soul. It's something we've constructed as a civilization. But yeah, that's the great grandson of the supreme leader, the first supreme leader of Iran. Anyway.
Yeah, that's I hadn't seen this before. This was pretty.
Doesn't look quite Middle Eastern. Anyway,
let me. So then, you're saying the children of Pahlavi or himself, like
himself. So the current claimant, Reza Pahlavi. He looks so. There's nothing wrong with that. To me, he looks like an Iranian uncle. I love that. I love his phenotype. He looks like us. But it's just funny that he is like the Western aspirational one, and he looks so ethnic and brown. But then the ones who want to be Eastern and Islamic, they look so. So you couldn't make this up. So anyway,
I want to bring up the contrast. I think just to really.
Yeah, I sent you a few pictures of him. So. The one on the left is the one who wants Sharia, and the one on the right, I guess it'll be pulled up, is the one who wants Iran to be Western. It's a very kind of peculiar situation we have. Oh man, yeah. So this is the more ethnic looking one. He's the Western one, and then the one who looks Western is the secular one or the religious one. So make it make sense.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't put both on the screen at this.
Yeah, it's all right. You find everything in Iran. You find every phenotype. You find Turkmen, Hanafis who look Asian who look Uyghur, and you will find people in the South who are African or Khaliji Arab. You will find people who look like you and I do, a little lighter, a little bit more white passing maybe. Iran is diverse. We've mixed, like you said, we're a civilization. We're like Rome. We had a citizenship system almost. Like people from all over came and joined us and assimilated and became Muslim. So
yeah, learn Farsi. Farsi was the official language in much of the Islamic world.
Yeah, exactly. So
primary even to Arabic.
We weren't parochial. We weren't inward facing. We were outward facing. That's my problem also with the seculars is it's a very inward facing idea that Iran will just look inward and will disconnect itself from its neighbors and its heritage. Like there's no future for that civilization. Iran needs to be in conversation with its region, with its neighbors, with its history, with its tradition of being a multi-ethnic, religion and language-based empire, not an ethnic-based country, which is what they're going for. Like, oh, we're Persian or whatever. That's never been that way. You find people all over the Muslim world with Persian last names, and they will very proudly, I'm sure you've heard this, but they'll very proudly tell you, my ancestors were Persian who moved to Kashmir, who moved to Turkey, who moved to Iraq, who moved to, Uzbekistan.
Hyderabad.
Yeah, exactly. And they're very proud. And that was who we were. We moved, we mixed, we married, we spread our influence, our language. Now our vision is to be very inwardly facing and to abandon that heritage and just be like French people. And the saddest part I find, we're joining at the wrong moment. Like if you wanted to be secular and Western, the moment to do it would have been the 20s or the 30s when it was still upwardly adjacent. Like the secular Western world is on its way down. And right as it's like the school bus is veering off the side of the cliff, we're like, no, let us on before it crashes and goes off the cliff. Let us on too.
Yeah, we're in a world of increasing nationalism and even ethno-nationalism. So, but anyway. I think it's a lack of confidence. Like if you're not grounded, if you become insecure and you start being more inward looking, more insular, more parochial. But if you are confident, you have a strong heritage, you have a strong grounding and an identity, then you're more confident to be able to look outward and be willing to mix, being willing to like open your doors. And
absolutely,
it's a confidence issue, I think.
Agreed.
Okay, well, I also want to ask you, maybe just as a final thing before we get into super chats, there are a lot of commenters who have questions for you. Are you okay with looking at those?
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do that. And before like the last thing, just the debate that you had, because you had a debate
with Mateen.
Yeah. That was a very fascinating debate. And
Thank you.
The guy is really detestable, and you did a great job in that debate.
Thank you.
Was that your first debate?
It was. I'm not a debater. I'm very far from you. I cannot say debate is my forte. I love your debates. I can't say that I can debate like you, but it's just, I'm lucky that they're not formidable opponents, the secular monarchists, because their ideology is like it's not that well liked by anyone. Go tell a random Westerner, I want a regime change to back a Western-backed dictator monarch. People would say, what? You want that? I mean, with you go up against the world order, secular liberalism, Christianity. That's a formidable opponent. That's like a fight that you start there on the up foot. You're on the back foot, like pushing. I'm already on the up foot. Like it's easy to say you're cringe. Everyone thinks they're cringe. So I'm no debater. I can give that title to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But it was a good performance, and you really brought out a lot of the contradictions in their position. And if it's still online, right? It's still on.
It is online. Yeah. If you just look up SHARGHZADEH debate, it should. I've never done another one, so it should just come up.
Yeah, I encourage people to look at that. But you kind of really exposed the kind of backstabbing mentality, because he was arguing that we want like America and Israel to just destroy Iran. Essentially,
he said he would take up arms and go fight in a war against Iran for America.
Yeah,
just think about that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So that was a great performance. And were you planning to do any other debates in the future?
If someone invites me, I would do it. I'm not really like a big confrontational person, but if someone really feels strongly about debating an opinion I have, sure, I would do it. I'm not against it.
The Sufi Rumi expert is going to come in, own you. Rumi expert destroys, like those YouTube titles. Destroys, owns the monarchist. Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay, let's look at the some of these super chats.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, here's a good one to start off with. Sammy says the real question: Cello kebab or Porsche Fessenjan?
Man, I would be stereotypical if I said cholo kebab because it's so well loved. But khoresh fisanjan is one of those foods that's hard. It's tricky to make it good.
Yeah.
It's not a super easy food. It requires a little bit of fine tuning. It's seasonal. You need to grind the right, the walnuts in the right way, and it's made with duck traditionally, which is less common. So if khoresh fisanjan is done properly, I will eat that. But if I just have to go, if you're just taking me to any old random Persian restaurant in Texas, I think Houston, right in Houston, I might just go with the safe cholo kebab just to be sure I'm gonna get something good.
Yeah, Fesenjun is like, that's how we say it in Shiraz, I guess. Fesenjun is like, it's more of an acquired taste as well.
It is,
because it's sweet. Like it's made with rob anar.
Exactly,
Like,
you're 100% right.
How do you pronounce rob, or how do you translate
rob anar?
Pomegranate, nectar,
molasses extract, something like that. Yeah, you're right.
So
and it has
sweet chicken, like, so it's gonna be acquired taste.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely. Persian food's interesting. It's different.
Yeah, it's how would you describe it? Like, what compared to other cuisines? Maybe it has a lot of similarity, obviously, with the neighboring countries.
Yeah.
But even with North African, like Moroccan type of dishes, some of the dishes, like fesenjun, I would say, I wouldn't be surprised to have an analog of that, like in a Moroccan restaurant.
Maybe, yeah. Iranian food, I notice, I can only speak confidently about our neighbors. I've had a lot of their food. It's similar to Iraqi or Pakistani food, but it relies more on sweet and savory flavors as opposed to spicy ones. So people joke, Persians can't take spice. And Persians really like to bring out the flavors of the ingredients themselves. So you'll eat a lot of stews where the main flavor comes from putting just tons of greens, like qorme sabzi, ash. There's just tons of greens in there and not so many spices. And that's why they get fresh greens, and they like real qorme sabzi is when people actually cut the greens up freshly, not when they just have them pre-dried or from a can, like is common. So Persian cuisine, it's trickier. If I had to just do a roll of the dice, I would rather eat like at an Indian restaurant or even a Turkish one, because you're more likely to just get an okay meal. Whereas Persian food, if it's done well, I would prefer it over our neighboring foods. But if it's done badly, it really misses, because there's not even anything to cling on to if it's badly done. It's not like, okay, at least it's sweet and hearty and spicy. It's just like if you eat bad cholo kebab, it's a disaster. If it's good, it's the best. When it's melting off the skewer and it's so tender, that's good. But if it's bad, if it's chunky and it's hard to bite into, you're like, oh man, I can't eat this. I
can't really enjoy like the kebab in other cultures unless it's like really spicy. So some of the desi kebabs, but like Turkish, I don't like their like Adana kebab. I guess
Persians do it better.
It's fine, but it just doesn't like meet the expectation of a kebab.
The essence, I think, of kebab is like steak, where the cut of the meat, the way it's cooked, the way it's lightly spiced really makes it shine. The juiciness. It's not like chicken where you just spice the chicken's chicken. Kebab should be like that. So when you bite into kubide, it's not spicy. It's how tender it is, that they tenderize it for a long time. It means beaten, literally. They take a meat and they tenderize it and they grind it with different things and then they squeeze it. And that's what makes it good. Not the flavors, but like the experience of it. Or again, like the texture, the shishlik, the way they cook it. Anyone can just spice chicken and cook it with rice. Every country has a dish like that. But Iranian kebab, the way Americans and Westerners are really good with steaks, we're not really that good with it. Iranians are like that with kebabs. When you eat a good steak, you don't want a million spices on it. You want a little salt, pepper, a little sauce. That's it. You want to experience the meat preparation.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. We're kind of kebab supremacists.
Kebab supremacy. Yeah.
Okay. And let's go to this. By the way, there should be plenty of good Iranian restaurants over there, right?
There is a lot in New Jersey and New York and in Connecticut. All over the New York metro area. There's so many people. There's so many Persians. Closest to me, because I live in Upper Manhattan, are the ones in Jersey. Also in Patterson, you have tons of just Muslim stuff in Patterson, New Jersey. Not too far, like a 30-minute drive.
Yeah, it's hard to find like a bad kebab, like specifically at Iranian restaurants. So,
yeah,
but
it tends to be our specialty.
How about kelle pacha?
Oh, kelle pacha, which I said the Arabs say bacha, the Iraqis, and same with Turks, they have it, is an acquired taste. I don't like the texture. God, this is going to sound gross. Of brain, the texture is just gross to me. Yeah. I can't get over the texture, but the meat parts I think are pretty good. If you don't think about it, like if you don't think that it's a sheep's face, if you just eat it and with bread and enjoy the broth,
what about zabun?
Zaboon, Chash, and Mars. I just can't, because you're just looking at an eyeball or a tongue or a brain. It's just like the brain texture is so gross, by the way. Like I can't.
Yeah, I don't like the brain, but the eyeball and the zaboon. Zaboon is I love zaboon for breakfast. You just have a couple of those, and with nice.
Well, they joke,
sangak or nuna barbari. That's
if you ate Mars, and that's why, mashallah, you're smart, and then you ate Zaboon, which is why you're poor half. You're talkative and you have a good speaking ability.
That's like an insult to say you're poor half, right?
I'm joking. Yeah. Both of us are poor half. We have a tendency to annoy people with the things we say.
That's true.
So maybe others would say we're poor half.
and like a trolling aspect, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another from the same person. Tell us about Ta'aruf. Ta'aruf is, I think, like the gem of Iranian culture.
It is. Yeah, it is.
That's another thing that I think Iranian Ta'aruf supremacy. Like we just do Ta'aruf really well. It's not so much to be annoying, because sometimes if it's too much, it's just annoying.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
You're just 100%. Too like. What's the best translation of Ta'aruf like?
So it's so interesting. I did a linguistic look into it for a class. I did like a short webinar on it. Ta'aruf in Arabic comes from arafa. What is it, like tafa'ul, the wazn? I can't remember if it's 5 or 6. If you look up the Ozan chart, you can find it. It means when something is mutual. So ta'aruf means mutually understood things. So it means like the etiquette is mutually understood, right? So we understand how to interact with each other. When we say, do you want it? You're supposed to say no. I would say it's basically a very intense choreographed dance, where for the people in it, it's beautiful. To see it, it's beautiful. But if you step in and you don't know what you're doing, you'll just screw the dance up. You'll better just stay on the sidelines and watch the stage, right? So it's a very beautiful dance, which lubricates social settings and avoids the weirdness that you find with very direct Westerners, where Westerners will say, no, I don't want that. Or, no, I don't want to see you anymore. I'm busy today. Or please leave now. Like it allows you to communicate those just direct things in a very subtle and unpressuristic and like a very polite way. Like you would never tell someone, no, I don't want to come to your house. You'd say like, well, maybe I'll come. Maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe you should come. And then like, it's just this beautiful dance. And it's so, like you said, it's a gem of our culture, really. So it's something to be proud of that we maintained.
It's always funny with Westerners, though. Like growing up, like where I didn't understand that. Well, they don't have Ta'aruf, so they come. Like a friend comes to your house, and then he immediately says, "So what's for dinner?" And he like goes to your kitchen, like opens the fridge. Oh, got anything to eat? Like, dude, like wait till I offer you. Or then you go to someone's house. You go to a Westerner's house, and like they might have like some fruit on the table or something, or some drink.
They'll never have you eat
They'll never offer, and you're never gonna reach out and take it. You're never gonna go reach out and like, I'll just help myself. So it's
it's very awkward. Or they don't give drinks. Like when you go to a Persian person's house, they'll offer you a glass of Persian tea. When you go to a Western person's house, they'll just give you like a water bottle or a Coke can. And you're just like, okay, I don't really want Coke right now, but fine.
So Ta'aruf is, and there's so many like subtleties and nuances with it that it doesn't take long to learn, but it takes a lifetime to master.
Very true. This is very good way to put it, actually. Great.
So here's another question for you. Casey says, Shahrzadeh, I saw a clip of you saying that the golden age of Islam is Eurocentric. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I have a video explaining it, but I'll just give this short spiel about it. Basically, Muslims love this idea that, we had a golden age, because it's very Western approved to talk about a golden age, and we had a golden age. The problem is two things. One is that, three things. One is spiritual, that the golden age was the age of the prophethood and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. That was the actual golden age, when there was revelation, when there was prophetic guidance, when there were the best of generations. That for us, theologically, is the golden age. And then the second thing is that the idea that there was a golden age has implicitly within it that everything before and after has been terrible. That Islam was only good when we were scientifically advancing, which is good, but that not when the Sahaba were there, or not when the Futuhat were there. I think the golden age is when we conquered Persia and Rome. We conquered the two world empires with a ragtag team of soldiers who had nothing, right? That was our golden age, maybe to me as well. And then the other issue is that it has implicitly in it this idea that Islam is doomed to fail. So if you actually read about what people said about the Golden Age, Muslims just love the idea, oh, Golden Age, Golden Age. They said, and I quote it in the video, Muslims are just doomed to decline. That Muslim civilization, once it peaks, has no regenerative energy. This was the people who cooked up this theory. We don't have time to get into it. Said this, that the idea was that Christianity has peaks and troughs, but Islam just has one golden age. So when Muslims say golden age, they don't know all that. But it's important, and Daniel, you've done work on this stuff, of actually deconstructing the way we think about Islam. And even if we mean it in a positive way, even if we don't know the negative things behind it, it's really important for us to understand the negative, the actual bad part of the mindset. Like, for example, Daniel, you've done a lot of work on this, the work on the age of the marriage of Aisha radiallahu anha. It's good if as Muslims we have an internal debate about this. Everything in the Syria is important, but it's not good if we only care just to cope and to apologize about Islam. Similarly, it's good if we look back at the 1200s and say, wow, look how technologically advanced we were. We led the day then. But it's bad if we think, oh, Islam is only good when we're advanced technologically. And oh, the golden age was not actually the age of the Sahaba. It was in like Baghdad in 1150. So that's the short version of the answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a very good answer.
Thank you.
Here is a Saint Jihadist. Let's see, about Wahhabis. You talk about Wahhabis being bad, but Shia do justify Iran's actions on what they did to Sunnis and protesters. IRGC are killing innocents, and Islamophobes are using that to fund their hatred on Islam. Do you agree what the Iranian regime are doing to the protesters? So I guess you can answer.
Yeah, I think it's maybe for you, but I'll say thanks for the big super chat. Whoa, anyway, so basically, look, we can criticize everyone. We don't have to have this side or that side. I'll criticize this side, that side, and my own side. Shias have a lot of beliefs that if you look into, maybe you wouldn't love. And Sufis, we have our goofies. We have our goofy Sufis. And Salafis have people who are very respectful and they love hadith and sunnah and they'll give you your rights as a Muslim. And we have Salafis who will attack you and lie about you and takfir everyone and their aunt as well. So every group has good and bad. Every government does good and bad. So Iran's actions, no, I don't think that every action Iran does is justified. And I don't think that an innocent person getting killed is ever defensible or good. So if Iran does it, it's bad. If Saudi does it, it's bad. If Egypt, Jordan, whoever does it, I'll say innocent people shouldn't ever be in any crossfire. So it's very easy for us. That's the beauty of being a Muslim. When you have truth and justice as your measuring stick, as your Furqan and the Quran and Sunnah, then you don't have to like play sides and apologize for bad actions, even if they're coming from your side. Like me, I'm a Sufi, but I don't have to look at some goofball, wearing like a red or purple hat, screaming and going and chimping out and say, oh, because he's a Sufi, I'll defend him. No, you don't understand. But I could say, yeah, he's weird. I don't do that. I don't approve of that. And I love Persian culture. But yeah, if Persian culture has haram stuff in it, yeah, I don't like that either. It's the beauty of being Muslim.
Yeah, I mean, it requires a level of IQ to be able to make these distinctions. Unfortunately, some people don't have that. But I mean, I would say, like, for the Iranian government, I agree with you. Like, there's plenty of things to criticize about them, but as far as them like resisting this regime change effort that's being funded by the West, I stand with Iran. I'm not going to stand for the this Western-backed Mossad operation. So. But yeah, if any innocent people are getting harmed in the crossfire, then obviously I don't agree with that. I don't support that. But let's like be real about what's happening. Okay, let's see. Last word says, reason why Muslims keep culture and Islam separate is because we don't want those quote unquote cultural Muslims, say it's also culture. We don't want those cultural Muslims. What does that mean?
I don't know. I want all Muslims. If they're just cultural, then we'll make them religious too. We'll show them the beauty of having a spiritual life. I don't like this viewpoint. I mean, yeah, I get it. The people who come and say like, I'm only culturally Muslim, but they don't do anything. Yeah, that's maybe not great, but that's a window. It's better for them to say I'm just a cultural Muslim than to say I'm an ex-Muslim, like so many of our Persian compatriots. So let's just get them in any way we can get them. If they're a cultural Muslim, great. They're still Muslim. We'll say, well, brother, spiritual life is important. It's not just culture. It's not just kebabs and tarof. It's also being in touch with your creator. Why are you here? So no, we need a window to catch them too.
Yeah, a lot of like, I think a cultural Muslim that has a sense of being Muslim and with the ummah, with the jama'ah, you know, they care about other Muslims. I think that's a good thing. Like, and we hope that they will become more religious. But the fact that they're going to be supporting, as opposed to a traitor, as opposed to someone who is going to like throw us under the bus or sell the ummah to our enemies, I think being cultural in that sense is much better.
Preferable, yeah.
Preferable. Here's a theory that's being proposed by Netra. Theory: Trump isn't seeking chaotic regime change, but a deal, but it would require SL to step aside and Iran giving up a nuke program. In return, the regime gets to live on. Do you guys buy this?
Seems plausible. Trump strikes me as a deal maker. He tore up the original nuclear deal so that he could create a new one, right? That was his initial idea. So I think it's possible that he just wants to make a lot, like a deal basically with them. And he doesn't want a regime change war.
But do you think this would even happen? Like, would the supreme leader, Khamenei, actually step aside?
Would the supreme leader step aside? No, it's not possible. That part of it, no. I don't know the exact details.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, Trump might be seeking a deal. People are saying that Trump is also personally has a vendetta against Khamenei because he's the only world leader who has not agreed to meet with him. So
yeah, and he won't, unfortunately.
So like North Korea, Kim Jong-un will meet with Trump. Xi Jinping will meet with Trump, but Khamenei will not agree to meet with Trump, and he takes this as a personal slight.
Yeah, it's a personal slight.
That's plausible. I think that Trump would actually try to like focus extra effort to take him out just for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally possible. I mean, I've kind of stopped speculating, unfortunately, because it's just so unpredictable, and I feel confident in just my statement I made about speculating that protests will not take the regime down as it is. But in terms of what Trump will do, I mean, he's so unpredictable. It's like part of his brand. I hesitate to speculate anything because who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll wake up and we've seen that he struck Iran. That is just like a whole, elaborate game to throw Iran off its foot, that he said he'll strike and then he didn't. So they'll be like, okay, thank God he didn't. And all of a sudden he does. So who can actually tell you what's happening with certainty?
Yeah. Scary 3 more years of Trump.
Yeah. God help us.
This Saint Jihadist once again says, people think I'm a Wahhabi, but is it wrong to condemn it? If you support people who killed your own, then I should support white nationalists since they speak for Aussies like me who are barely surviving, living in my parents' home, wanting to move out. What do you make of this?
Get it. Yeah. People think I'm a Wahhabi, but is it wrong to condemn it? I don't understand.
What?
Just to say you're not a Wahhabi? If you support people who killed your own, then we don't support people who kill their own. White nationalists, since they speak, I don't understand what it's fully saying. Maybe they can, in the chats, clarify it. I don't
know what that means. But thank you for your big super chat. Appreciate it. This is Segjagzvar. Thank you for your super chat. May Allah protect the Islamic Republic of Iran.
He's from Sweden.
He's from Sweden.
Swedish name,
yeah. Here's another one. Observer says, do Sunnis living in Iran have the same view of not wanting regime change because it benefits Israel? What do you think of?
Yeah, I talk to Iranian Sunnis all the time in Iran. I've lived even with an Iranian Sunni before. I don't know. It's hard to say. They're mixed, just like all the groups in Iran. I mean, you have Sunnis who are very in mainstream society. The Achomis or Laristanis, they're very present in Dubai, actually, and just the Gulf generally. But they're very kind of Persian. They speak Persian. They're very Persian assimilated. They're like the most Persian-seeming Sunnis, aside from the actually ethnic Persian Sunnis as well. So maybe those ones, or maybe their views are more similar to mainstream Iranian society. But the Kurds, the Baloch, the Turkmen, the Arabs, they have considerations that are ethnic as well as geopolitical as well as religious. So if you ask a Baloch person, does he prefer Iran that's more religious than one that's more secular? Probably more religious. I mean, they're like Deobandi Hanafis. I can't imagine he wants secularism, but they also are upset with the economic situation. They're the ones hardest hit. It's the poorest region. So it's very complicated. It's hard to just say one thing, but you also do have Sunnis who, believe it or not, are very much in step with the government because they have this broader vision of having an Islamic society that transcends even whether it's 12 or not. Iran's not majority Sunni anyway, so it's always going to be 12er. The question is for them, do you want a religious 12er or a secular 12er? And many of them, they want a religious one, but I can't speak for them. But you'll find a diversity of views, and it's a big country.
Well, there's a perception amongst, or this is a claim that's often made by sectarians, is that, well, Sunnis are repressed in Iran, and basically if you're a Sunni in Iran, they're going to throw you in a camp, basically. Like, this is the kind of image that they want to project to rile up Sunnis against the Islamic Republic. How would you characterize the treatment of Sunnis in Iran?
No, that's definitely, the people exaggerate. I mean, look, ultimately, there's a few things at play. There are too many of them for the state's treatment to be below like a certain threshold. There's just like over 10 million at least, if not more. That's like the most conservative estimate, right? You have, out of Iran's like 14 ethnicities, 4 or 5 of them are Sunni. And then you have ethnicities where they're mixed. So you'll find all kinds of people. Like Iran has millions of Turks. Some of them are Sunnis. And even in the northwest of the country, you'll find Sunni Turks. And Kurds, a lot of them are Sunni. Arabs, half of them are Sunni. Baloch, they're almost all Sunni, among other groups, right? And they're dispersed geographically and culturally. Some are urban, some are rural, some are nomadic. So there's no like one Sunni. Even in Khorasan, you have fully Persian Khorasani Sunnis that are very similar. I've been there to right across the border in Afghanistan. They're Hanafi, Deobandi type, Sunni Muslims there, and they speak Persian. So how the government treats them, I mean, there's ultimately a level of being a religious minority that might exclude you from certain mainstreamness, for sure, wherever you are. And if you're a Shia in a Gulf country, you probably feel that way too. But how the government treats them, I find, has more to do with factors other than them being Sunni. So Kurds could represent a separatism threat, or Azeris. And Azeris are Shia, and Kurds are mostly Sunni, but also there are Shia Kurds. And some Kurds who are more nationalist, feel more kinship to other Kurds. Like I've also had a Kurdish roommate when I was in Iran who said I would be fine with my daughter marrying, if I had a kid one day, a Kurdish Shia, even though I'm a Shafi'i Sunni from Sanandaj, but not a Sunni Arab guy from like the southern part of Iran, because being a Kurd is important to me. It's my identity. And then you also have ethnicities in Iran that are Sunni that are not a separatist threat, like Loristani Persians, Khorasani Sunnis. It's just like they're just part of Iran's fabric. There's nowhere for them to go, nothing for them to do to be a threat or whatever. So a lot of it has to do with that. They do not have the biggest issue that I noticed for me as a Tehrani was that there is no official masjid in Tehran called Sunni masjid. There are masallas and there are places that in effect are masajid, but there is no place that's officially called Sunni masjid, because they don't want there to be a Sunni imam who gives a khutbah in Tehran to be like basically a political challenging pulpit. They want the main Sunni pulpits like in Balochistan and Sanandaj to be like far away from the capital. Like they don't want this vibe, I think. This is just my hunch, that they don't want there to be like a pulpit where the government is getting criticized by like a conservative Sunni cleric, the way that Mawlavi Abdul Hamid, this guy, mentioned. Now, Mawlavi Abdul Hamid is highly critical of the government, but he's also against Iran being attacked and separatists. He doesn't want the Baloch to go away from Iran. He considers himself Iranian, basically. So I think I don't know. I don't have anything against him. I haven't looked into him much. He seems like a good enough guy. He's basically the Islamic leader of the Iranian Baloch in Zahedan.
To what extent, too, these Sunni groups are they able to criticize the government there?
I think in some ways maybe they feel like they should not say as much, but in other ways they also get some leeway because the government wants to avoid the perception that it's clamping down on minorities. It's very sensitive or like measured in the way it interacts with like Jews, Sunnis, Armenians, any minority, because they're very attentive of how that looks internationally, very conscious of their image in some ways. And they like to portray Iran as a country where people all live in peace. So they're very, I mean, there is a lot of abuse and mistreatment of everyone for every reason in Iran. I mean, it's a global South country with development issues, with governance issues. It's not a perfect society. Don't get me wrong on that. But it really depends on who you are, what positioning you're in, what you're criticizing. There's generally red lines in Iran. Like you can't call for the downfall of the country or the supreme leader. But especially now with how everyone's upset, you can kind of just criticize anything other than that at this point. And you do see videos of the Sunni clerics and Kurdistan and Balochistan and the southern part in the Arab provinces, and they're just like criticizing the government basically every week now. They have a lot of development issues, climate issues. So I mean, it's very on and off. You could be more free now, less free in the future. The climate could change. There could be a war. There could be peacetime. There could be a government that is more kind of
looking to have amicable relations with the society and one that's kind of more strict. And they understand those complexities themselves by day to day.
That makes sense. Yeah, a lot of people just see Iran as a black box, so they have no sense of these kinds of distinctions. Here's someone asking, is Shahrzadeh Sunni? Please explain journey.
Yeah, sure. So I don't really identify strongly with a label for myself. If I had to say anyone is particularly most appealing to me, it's Rumi. So if you want to be like by technicality, I guess I am. I think unless you actively identify something else, it's kind of just the box you fall into. But I'm not one of these guys who like beats my chest about what group I am. So if you want to just say pure technicalities, my teachers, my tradition, they're Maturidi and Hanafi and Mevlevi, and they have like the labels are all there in terms of like what my Islamic genealogy or heritage is. That's what Rumi's tradition is. If you go to Konya, the people who study and teach Rumi in his madrasa are Maturidi, Hanafi, Mevlevis. That's their Islamicate background. But I am not a sectarian. Like I'm not going to takfir Atharis or say that, if you don't follow the Hanafi madhab, like you're wrong, or, only, or the opposite. There's people who hate Abu Hanifa. Just, I don't know why exactly. There's this hatred out there for him. So in the default sense, you could say that, yeah, but I don't like this idea of being pigeonholed into, he's Sunni, so that makes him like a Sunni Iranian, so that makes him like hate the government, so that makes him like be a self-hater, that means he's like pro-separatism. I hate all these aspersions and assumptions that it brings. So to answer, yes, I've never really said that publicly, but sure, yes. But I'm not a sectarian. I love everyone. I'm nice. I just have an Orthodox kind of view, normal Iranian, Ottoman, you can say, historical view of Islam.
But did this like create tension with like your grandparents or with your family?
It did in a way. Not so I never like explicitly said, only Sunnis are right, or you guys are all wrong, or you guys are all stupid. I just would say, I just don't buy into the narrative. I mean, that's really what it is. Shiism presents you a particular telling of early Islamic history. And if you believe in it, you're Shia, and if you don't, you're not. And I just don't believe in the telling. Like the idea that all the Sahaba were questionable and that there was like this massive conspiracy and that it was abundantly clear that the succession went in the wrong way and that the certain rights were usurped. Now, other elements I think are more on the Shia side, like, what happened to Hussein was a tragedy. Not that Sunnis don't say that, but like they're right to bring that up, for example. But generally, I just can't buy into the idea that all the Sahaba are questionable, or that all the caliphs, early caliphs, are questionable, or that certain practices or actions are like conducive to spiritual health. I don't even go, by the way, from the angle of like proving if it's haram or not to mourn every Muharram. I'm just like, is this spiritually a good idea? This is like Rumi, for example, he attacks it from that angle. He says this is not spiritually healthy. He told a Shia in his Masnavi, he has a debate with a Shia in a madrasa in Halab. He lived in Syria, he studied there, and there's historically up until this day Shias there. And he says, look, I'm not even getting into the permissibility angle in the Masnavi. He says, is this spiritually healthy? Is this good for your deen to be doing this? So that was really eye-opening for me when I read that. I said, wow, this is amazing. We look at this the wrong way. So that's my tradition. I don't hate Iranians for being Shia. I think most Iranians are just Muslim. They don't even really know. It's just like culturally passed down. There's like some cultural affectations associated with it. I love everyone. I love Iranians. I don't care if they're 12, or I would hope that they just embrace Islam with their full heart like they used to, despite what's going on. And I'm like Pakistanis. You notice Pakistanis love all Muslims. Someone said this. He says Arabs love Arabs, Turks love Turks, Pakistanis love everyone. If you're Iranian, they'll say my brother. If you're Turk, they'll say mashallah, Ottoman Empire. If you're Arab, they say mashallah, Arabic is beautiful. I feel like them. I love everyone.
Mashallah, that's a good attitude to have.
Thank you.
Beautiful attitude. Here's Saint Jihadist is just giving a lot of super chats, so we have to read
Sure, thank
material. Levantines are the ones fleeing to Western countries, yet people here say, quote, love Iran, but why doesn't Iran take them in? Why do they come to Western nations?
Iran does take people in. Iran has the highest refugee population in the world, not just per capita, in pure numbers. Iran has like 5 million. Look it up. It's a well-known statistic. Has like 5 million Afghan refugees living in Iran. Iran has, not only by raw numbers, but per capita, it would be crazy. Iran has 90 million people and 5 million Afghans. And that's not counting the ones who have been here so long or been there so long that they're citizens now. 5 million people who are on the books as Afghan refugees. So that's like 5%. If America was 5% refugee, we would have like 20 million or 25 million right? That would be an unbelievable number. It would be like as many undocumented, illegal people as are here. There would be official refugees. Think about how many Mexicans you see in your day-to-day life. Imagine if you saw that many people from, I don't know, some random country like Yemen. You would think, oh my God, we see them every day in Iran. Every day in Iran, you see Afghans everywhere. And I love seeing them. I love the Qabli polo. I love going to the masjid with them. I love wearing their clothes. I love their poetry. Their accent is so beautiful. So I think they enrich our experience as Iranians. I'm glad that they're our civilizational cousins and brothers.
To be real, though, there's a lot of racism against them too.
There is, yes, yeah, no, not to whitewash that way for sure. Unfortunately, and mostly from the secular crowd, because again, they don't have that Islamic brotherhood in them. See, I feel that they're my brother. I don't care if they're Afghan or not.
Yeah, that's kind of the ugly side that we should mention. That unfortunately there are a lot of racists, and they do tend to be secular, and on that basis, they don't like the Afghans actually.
Unfortunately.
Let's see. Okay, another. And by the way, if you don't feel like addressing something, we can move on.
Yeah.
So don't feel pressured. People here really show the helping. Not a single mosque helped me and my mother, rather as a church, a Christian community. That is the reason she at least has a home and living okay. Muslims here lash you with rudeness, while Christians are understanding and help you. I guess he's someone in the U.S. maybe or Canada.
Look, Muslims fall short of Islam, or mosques act as like immigrant centers and places. And Daniel, you probably relate to this. Our mosques act as places for like doctors and engineers to flex their egos and to feel really good about themselves. We don't fulfill all the directives we have. But I would push back and say, do you remember the milk thing where a woman was calling to test, and mosque would just say, what type of formula is it, ma'am? They wouldn't even ask her a question. They would just say, what formula do you need? Whereas the churches would say, this is a church, you're calling the wrong place. So I would push back and say there's also mosques who will help you with full ikhlas, full sincerity as well. It's good and bad.
Yeah, there's a big scandal here in Houston because you had a massive flood. This was like 8-9 years ago. And the big church, the most wealthy church, closed its doors, like Joel Osteen church. And they like they're so rich and wealthy. Like there was a stadium that they bought.
A stadium, and they closed the doors.
The Summit, it used to be the Summit. They
unbelievable
repurposed it for a church, and then there was a huge flood, and they closed the doors to that. So yeah, it's a mix.
Good and bad everywhere.
Okay, Muhammad Qasim says, "Assalamu alaikum. As a Yemeni, I hope Iran stay to support the boxes of resistance. God bless the Iranian government." Thank you, Daniel, for your work.
Okay. We love our Yemeni brothers. Thank you so much. Wish the best for Yemen.
Yeah, of course. Let's see. We already saw that comment. Islamic It says, do you think multi-party politics can work in Iran? Do you think pre-Pahlavi dynamics is viable? Also, thoughts on the new Syria?
Pre-Pahlavi, unfortunately, the Qajar dynasty assimilated, and there's like no Persian-speaking Qajar descendants that I know of. They're all like Americanized. I think one of them lives in Texas, and his name is Muhammad (Mickey) Qajar. He like goes by Mickey. It's really funny. You should go meet him and interview him. Daniel. Yeah. Can multi-power politics work? No, I think Iran just needs a strong central government. I think it would disintegrate, unfortunately. And thoughts on the new Syria? Man, I wish them the best. I'm a little hesitant about how things are going right now, questioning their ability to make a viable country with no defenses and constant meddling. But I don't know. Syria is just a tragedy, and it's just so depressing. I grew up with Syrian refugees in Detroit. It's just so depressing to see functional country. It was put together, and it just governed into the ground, and civil war and refugees. And I fear Iran will go in that direction. I'm going to suspend judgment. People give me tongue lashings because I said when Jawlani came to power, I said, like, let's wish for the best. Let's give him Husn al-Dhan. Maybe he'll fix the country. And this is before Israel bombed all their capabilities, by the way. That was before that. That was like day one. I said, thank God, maybe we'll have a new Syria, and maybe that's not happening. So I'm just going to withhold further comments about that. I'm not Syrian, ultimately.
So you're telling me that as an Iranian, you're not salivating over the billions who have died, the billions who have killed?
Yeah, we did lose $30 billion that we lent Assad, let alone money that we spent. So we did lose a lot of money on that gamble.
Yeah, but just people watching, to be clear, yes, we condemn Bashar al-Assad. We condemn the killing of anyone with the backing of the Iranian government. This was a tragedy, and this was a crime, war crimes committed against Syrian Sunnis. Here's real Hashem Diab. Could it be said that the West's war with Iran could be a continuation of Rome versus Persia, or at least an elitist motive?
Maybe Jerusalem versus Persia. I don't know. I mean, you can stretch these things. Maybe the Persian's always been at war with its West historically, so there's truth to that. If you go back, a lot of Persian dynasties collapsed because they were overextended in their West, so there's truth to that.
We have mountains though that provide
that protect us. Yeah, there are shields, thank God, on our borders.
Last word says, wait, the guy he debated is the weirdo Iranian nationalist from Mehdi Hassan Jubilee video. I guess.
Yeah, Mateen Samimiat. I hope he's doing well with his copium wherever he is in LA right now.
Yeah, in LA. Tehran-Julis. If knowledge were in Thuraya, the Pleiades star cluster, men from Persia would surely attain it, says the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, that's a beautiful hadith about Persians.
Mashallah.
Does the Mesnavi actually refer to this hadith?
Not explicitly, implicitly it does. It nods to it, but it doesn't quote it literally. But yeah, we are proud of this heritage we have of ilm. Hope to continue it.
Inshallah. Let's see. If Iran moves its capital to the Makran area, how will that impact Iranian elite view of their identity and regional integration?
That would be good if Iran's center of gravity could be the Khalij. It would make Iranians a lot better off, I think. We'd be a lot chiller. We'd have more in common with the region. We'd be our next door Khaliji brothers. We would have a more healthy relationship with our Islamic identity. The Baloch would get a lot of investment because the capital would be in Balochistan, which is a purposeful thing, by the way, is to help invest in the disinvested parts of the country. So yeah, I would love that.
Let's see. Ask what he thinks of Shah Ismail and the Safavids.
I don't like forced conversions. I'm just against that. The people should be allowed to be whatever religion they want. I mean, you could say, okay, but then Muslims did that. Yeah, Muslims converted the rule, but they didn't forcefully convert the population. That's different. The Safavids actually went in and force converted everyone, which is not a good policy generally. But
yeah, it's a 12-erism. Sonic Boom says, approximately how much of Iran still practices Islam? Iranians online or in the West will say it's close to 0, so I have no frame of reference.
If you think of Islam as a civilizational identity, everyone's practicing it always. We're saying salam every time we see each other, as much as seculars hate it. So everyone's practicing it always. If you mean the day-to-day pietistic rituals, I mean, those have declined because of the culture war with the government, but it's still there. And we ultimately can't say how much because there's no stats. Even my own impression are based on my very narrow range of experiences in Tehran. You can go in places outside of Tehran where everyone's super religious, 12ers, Sunnis, everyone, different groups, different places. But yeah, I mean, it is true to say that these exterior presence of Islam is diminished by the culture war with secularism and religion. That's true.
Okay. Do you think there is any type of revival though in religiosity that you can tell?
In part of the reason I like using Rumi, by the way, is that in the spiritual realm, so you find people who are raised secular becoming religious again via tasawwuf. Because they find people like Rumi, like Shahzadeh, like Hafiz, they find the more spiritual thing, which is more palatable, and then that brings them full circle to being conventionally religious. And usually the only time you find the hardcore secularist Iranians saying anything good about Islam or even doing anything Islamic is relating to our spiritual tradition. So I think we will find revival, but it will start there, where as opposed to the more like traditional notions of what Islam looks like.
It's interesting. Let's see where I read this. I thought, or we already addressed the couple of the first questions. But what do you the Persian in Swahili?
I have a few students who are from Tanzania. They're Persians who are from there, either distant ethnic ties or like parents immigrated there. I have a handful of friends from that background as well. So there's a lot of Persian influence in Oman and in the Swahili coast.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Did not know that. There are Africans in Iran, like Black West Africa.
Yeah, look up Afro-Iranians. Yeah, there's a huge population. The Portuguese brought a lot of them a few hundred years, 300-400 years ago, and they stayed.
So they're from West Africa specifically?
Yeah, they're West African. I think they're Shafi'i, and they live in the port towns in the south of Iran.
Like Tijani background or something?
I don't think they're... I wonder how removed it is, because I think the Portuguese got them from West Africa, and then they sailed. They used to sail all the way around to go before the the Suez Canal was made. So they would get them from West Africa, and instead of going to Brazil, some of them went all the way around to Iran and Oman, traded them there for stuff in Iran, and then went to Southeast Asia, traded that for stuff from Southeast Asia, and then went all and did the whole thing again. So there was a triangle trade in America, but there was also that trade which brought West Africans. I don't think they have connections to the Tijanis. I think they lost that, but they're Shafis, Sunnis in the south, the African Iranians.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What's the population like?
I don't know. Iran doesn't do race censuses, so we don't know for sure how many there are. But there's a noticeable presence in southern cities of Iran. You find them.
I've never been to the southern portion. Like
I went as a child. As a child, I thought all black people were black Americans. So when I would see a black Iranian, for the first time I started speaking English. And my dad said, "Why do you speak English?" And I said, "Well, he's American. He's from Michigan." He says, No. There are black people in Iran too. So he had to explain to me that Afro-Iranians were a thing. I thought black people are only in America. I mean, I was like 5 years old. What do I know what the world is?
That's interesting. Or race conscious from a young age.
Yeah. Anyway.
This is Farhad says, Azizam, as a Western Iranian Sunni, this is a priceless convo. Any tips for dealing with secular Iranians?
I would say,
bait them.
Yeah, I would say rage bait online is funny, but interpersonally, just have some mercy. These people have been bothered by their problems and immigration and trauma, and they've been taught all these narratives about themselves. Mercy, kindness, a sense of compatriotness. You're my hamvatan. Islam is part. Just like give them honey, not poison, or put the medicine in the honey, and also getting at them with people like Rumi, like Hafez, is a good way, because they can't deny that. Who's going to say, I hate Rumi as a Persian, even if they're secular? They're going to say, yeah, Rumi is great. Then you use that as the in to say, well, guess what? He was a Hanafi, Qadhi.
Mashallah, yeah. Let's see. Timothy says, what's the difference between Bashar and Jolani?
One has a beard and one is shaved.
Yeah, that's good difference.
Let's not get into this. I mean, what do we know? Ask a Syrian geopolitical analysis. I mean, I don't know what to say.
Sure. Where is Iran hiding their nukes?
It's under the turban. That's why the turban's so big, actually. We take the turban off, the nuke, the warhead is right there. Under a mountain. I don't know.
If only.
Under a mountain. I don't know. Yeah, anyway. Kim Jong-un is feeling very vindicated. I'll just say that.
That's true. And here, maybe this is someone who's a secularist. Please don't say the protests are Mossad. We are Muslims and we're fed up with Khamenei's terror regime.
No one said that. I said they developed organically and they persisted organically. Just that certain elements from abroad also influenced them. I think that's just undoubtable. I mean, where do random Iranian protesters get training and weapons and coordination and all these things from? I mean, it's clear that there is something there. Not saying it's delegitimizing. People have a right to protest, but that's also just a fact. I think Western analysts, I mean, Israel itself said it. Bibi Netanyahu said our people are there with the protesters. And then also Ted Cruz said it. And then also the other one, what's his face, who was salivating over bombing Iran, who used to be Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, and Netanyahu, don't quote me, I'm pretty sure, look it up, said our people are there in the streets with the Iranians. They explicitly said it.
In the early days of the protests, there was the people who were protesting from the bazaars. They were saying, like, we actually disavow this other segment of protesters because they're going too far. We're just airing our economic grievances. That's why we're closing shops, having this strike. But we actually don't want to go, we don't want regime change, actually. So there were nuances even amongst the protesters. Yeah. And I think it is legitimate, like, if you have economic grievances, to speak out and say that, this is becoming intolerable. But that can easily be hijacked. And I think that was your point. I think that was my point. Okay. Those are our super chats. I really appreciated all your insights, Shahzadeh.
Thank you so much.
And I think my audience as well was very appreciative, and you're very generous with your time. I hope you'll be willing to do more of these collaborations.
Inshallah, yeah, I would like to.
With and everything Iran related, whether politics or culture, we can have you on and get your expert opinion, or we want to get your view on a certain line of poetry as well. We'll hit you up.
Yeah. Why not? I would love to do that. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for your super chats. Thank you to all the commentators, all the viewers. Let me know what you think. You can follow our brother SHARGHZADEH on X, previously known as Twitter, and I put the handle for his profile in the description. And also, he has a YouTube channel that goes by the same name, and you can subscribe to him on the YouTube channel. And you can also, can people find your book on Amazon?
They can, yeah. It's on my website too. But yeah, I've linked it on my Twitter as well. It's just called the Flame of Love.
Great.
But we have classes. We have all kinds of things. I am starting to make long form videos explaining things going on in Iran. Inshallah, once Iran maybe goes away from the news, other just topics generally, Islamic hate, culture, Persian hate things. Hopefully, this type of stuff we talked about.
Sure. Okay, that's great. So you know where to find him and get his material. Just go to his profile. And yeah, that is our show for today. We'll see you on the next one, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.